The Ghost Wife. How Evelyn Hart buried a billionaire in silence. She stood in the doorway of the ballroom where her husband was toasting his own empire, and for a single heartbeat, nobody recognized her. Then the chandelier light caught the diamonds at her throat, and Victor Hale's champagne flute slipped a full inch before his fingers remembered how to hold it. Beside her stood a man whose name alone could empty a room. Evelyn Hart had not come to beg. She had come to bury him. Before we step into her story, do me a favor. Drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and stay with me until the very end, because what Evelyn does in the final minutes will stop your breath. Let's begin. The house on Ashbury Lane had 22 rooms, and not one of them held a sound that belonged to her. Evelyn Hart stood at the tall window in the east drawing room, a cup of coffee going cold between her palms, and watched a groundskeeper rake leaves into a pile the wind would scatter again within the hour. She had been standing there for something like 40 minutes, long enough that the housekeeper, Marguerite, had walked past the doorway twice without speaking, the way one walks past a sleeping dog. It was a Tuesday in October. The kind of Tuesday where nothing was supposed to happen, and nothing did, and that was somehow worse. Victor had left at 6:30 that morning. He always left at 6:30. He'd kissed the crown of her head the way a man kisses a photograph of his mother, absent and obligatory, and said something about a dinner in the city he wouldn't be back from until late. Don't wait up, sweetheart. He hadn't called her sweetheart in the tone he meant it in years. Now it was just the shape her name took when he was already thinking about something else. She sipped her coffee. It was bitter. Marguerite made it strong because Victor liked it strong, and nobody had ever asked Evelyn how she took hers. 7 years in this house. Nobody had asked. The phone on the side table hummed once, a low electric rattle against the marble. Evelyn didn't turn her head. She knew the sound of her own phone the way mothers know the cry of their own child, and this wasn't hers. It was the spare. The one Victor kept on the console because he said the service was bad in his study, and he liked to take calls from the pool deck in the summer. She had noticed 3 months ago that he'd stopped taking it to the pool deck. He'd started taking it to the garage, then to the back garden. Then, 2 weeks ago, he had started taking it into the bathroom and running the tap while he talked. The phone hummed again. 3 short pulses. A message. Evelyn set the coffee cup down on the sill. She walked across the room in stocking feet, the rug absorbing every footfall, and picked up the phone. Victor had never given her the passcode, but Victor had also never been a particularly creative man. His mother's birthday had worked for the safe in the library. His mother's birthday had worked for the wine cellar keypad. His mother's birthday worked now. 4 digits. The screen unlocked like a door that had been waiting for her hand. The message at the top of the thread said, "Tonight, wear the red one. I want you in it, and then out of it." The thread was 9 months long. Evelyn stood very still in the middle of the drawing room, the phone a small cold weight in her palm, and she did not cry. She didn't gasp. She didn't do any of the things she would have done at 24, the year Victor had slipped a ring on her finger in a Tuscan vineyard and told her she was the only woman he had ever wanted to grow old with. She was 31 now. She had grown, if not old, then older. And what she did was read. She read every message, every one. She scrolled back through months of hotel confirmations and room numbers and private jokes, and a woman's name typed out in the casual intimacy of 1,000 text messages. Scarlett. Scarlett, baby. Scarlett, you ruin me. Scarlett Vane. 26 years old. Junior Vice President of Acquisitions at Hale Capital Partners. Evelyn had met her once, at the Christmas party 2 years ago, when Scarlett had been a new hire in a navy dress that fit her like a promise. Evelyn remembered thinking the girl had good posture. She remembered thinking Victor's hand had stayed a half-second too long on the small of Scarlett's back during the introduction. She remembered dismissing the thought because a wife who thinks that way about every young woman in her husband's office becomes a certain kind of wife, and Evelyn had worked very hard not to be that kind. She read a message from August. She has no idea. She never will. Women like Evelyn don't ask questions. She's furniture. Furniture. Evelyn's thumb hovered over the screen. Her wedding ring caught a sliver of sun through the window and threw it, briefly, onto the wall above the fireplace. She watched the little spot of light tremble there for a second, and then she put the phone back on the console exactly as she'd found it, screen down, 3 inches from the lamp. She walked out of the drawing room. She walked through the front hall and up the curved staircase, past the portrait of Victor's grandfather that always looked like it was judging her posture, and into the master bedroom. She closed the door. She sat down on the edge of the bed, and she didn't cry. That was the first thing she noticed about herself, and it was the thing that told her she was already someone else. A younger Evelyn would have been on the floor by now. This Evelyn sat on the edge of a bed she had picked out herself in a showroom on Madison Avenue, in a house she had decorated room by room while her husband was in meetings, and she thought, with a clarity so cold it almost hurt, I'm going to take everything from him, and he is not going to see me coming. She didn't know yet how. She only knew that the woman who had stood at the window 45 minutes ago had been a wife, and the woman sitting on the bed now was something else, and there was no bridge back to the first one. Furniture had learned to walk. She gave herself 3 days. 3 days to let nothing show. 3 days to kiss Victor at the door and ask about his meetings, and order the groceries and smile at the right charity emails, and laugh in the right places when he made a joke at dinner about the housekeeper's cat. 3 days to watch him, really watch him, the way she had never let herself watch him before. The small tell at the corner of his mouth when he lied. The way his left hand went to his phone every 7 or 8 minutes when he thought no one was looking. The way he said, I love you too now, the exact cadence, like a line he was reading off a card. On the 4th day, she called a lawyer. Not the family lawyer, not the one who had drawn up the prenup in a mahogany office on Park Avenue while Victor's father watched over the signatures like a hawk. Evelyn knew better than to touch anyone in that orbit. She called a woman named Diane Kessler. Diane Kessler had represented the second wife of a shipping magnate Evelyn had sat next to at a benefit 2 years ago. The woman had told Evelyn, half drunk on gin, if you ever need to disappear from a bad marriage, call Diane. She's a surgeon. You don't feel the cut until you're already on the other side of the room. Evelyn had written the number down on the back of a cocktail napkin and tucked it into a book on her nightstand. Emerson. Essays. Victor had never opened a book of essays in his life. She made the call from a payphone in a gas station 40 minutes outside the city because something inside her had whispered that anything routed through the house's network was not hers anymore. The payphone was sticky. The receiver smelled like someone else's cologne. Evelyn spoke Diane's name to a woman who sounded bored, and 20 seconds later a different voice came on the line, low and precise. This is Diane. My name is Evelyn Hart. I need to leave my husband without him knowing I've left until there's nothing left to fight over. There was a pause. Not a long one. Long enough for Diane Kessler to decide something. Can you be in my office on Thursday at 11? Yes. Don't bring your phone. Don't drive your own car. Don't tell anyone where you're going. If anyone asks, you had a hair appointment in the city and it ran long. Understood. Evelyn. Yes. What does he own that he thinks you can't touch? Evelyn stood in the gas station parking lot with the receiver pressed to her ear and the wind moving her hair, and she smiled for the first time in 4 days. Not a pleasant smile. A small, quiet, private smile that would have frightened anyone who saw it. Everything, she said. He thinks I can't touch anything. Good, Diane said. Those are my favorite cases. Geez. Diane Kessler's office was on the 38th floor of a building on Lexington Avenue, and it did not look like a lawyer's office. It looked like the study of a woman who had read every book in the world twice. Books on the shelves, books on the side tables, books stacked on the floor in neat towers like sleeping children. No diplomas on the walls. Just a single photograph of a younger Diane standing on the steps of a courthouse in what looked like Chicago, unsmiling. Diane herself was 56, silver hair cropped short, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She wore no jewelry except a thin gold wedding band, which Evelyn noted, and a watch that probably cost more than most cars. Sit, Diane said. Evelyn sat. Diane opened a leather folder. Tell me everything. Start with the prenup, Evelyn told her. The prenup had been ironclad. Evelyn walked away with $2 million, a car, and the Hamptons cottage in her name, which Victor's father had put in her name as a wedding gift without realizing what it would mean 7 years later. Everything else was Victor's. The apartment in the city, the house on Ashbury Lane, the art, the cars, Hale Capital Partners. All of it. 2 million, Diane said, tapping her pen. That's what he thinks you'll walk with if you file like a normal person. Yes. And what does he have that isn't on the prenup? Evelyn breathed in. She told Diane about the dinner in March when Victor had gotten drunker than he meant to and talked, over dessert, about a deal he was working with a shipping company in the Gulf. A deal that, if Evelyn understood the way he'd described it, involved invoices that went out for one amount and receipts that came in for a different amount, and the gap between the two numbers living in an account in a country whose name Victor had not said twice. She told Diane about the night in July when Victor had come home from a late dinner with two men she didn't recognize, and she'd heard him on the phone in his study saying the regulators won't look at it if it's buried under the Caldera transaction, and laughing in a way that had made something in her stomach turn over. She told Diane about the safe in the library that Victor thought she couldn't open. She told Diane about the ledger she had found in it 2 months ago, and put back exactly where she had found it, because at the time she hadn't known what she was looking at, and by the time she had already decided not to ask. Diane listened without writing a single word. When Evelyn was finished, Diane took off her reading glasses and let them fall against her chest on their chain. Evelyn, Diane said, do you understand what you're telling me? Yes. You're telling me your husband is a criminal. I'm telling you I'm married to a man who thinks I'm furniture, Evelyn said, and furniture doesn't read ledgers, but it turns out I do. Diane smiled. It was the first time she had smiled all morning. It transformed her face into something almost kind. All right, she said, here's what we're going to do. What they did over the next 4 months was so quiet that Victor Hale lived inside it and never heard it breathe. Evelyn opened accounts at a bank in a small town in Connecticut that nobody in Victor's circle had ever heard of. She opened them under her maiden name, which she had not used in 7 years and which Victor had told her once, early in the marriage, sounded like the name of a girl who worked at a diner. Evelyn Marsh. She had laughed then. She did not laugh now. She liked the sound of Evelyn Marsh. Evelyn Marsh was a woman who balanced her own checkbook. She photographed the ledger in the safe, 1 page at a time, over the course of 11 nights, always when Victor was at the apartment in the city. She scanned every document she could find in his study. She kept the originals exactly where they lived. She moved nothing. She took nothing. Victor would have noticed if a paperweight had drifted 2 inches. He did not notice that his wife had memorized the layout of his desk down to the angle of his pens. She stopped wearing perfume. She had worn the same perfume for 7 years, a jasmine and vetiver thing Victor had bought her in Paris on their honeymoon, and the house had learned the smell of it. She switched to nothing, just skin. It was the smallest kind of erasure, and she did it on purpose. She wanted to see how long it would take him to notice. He never noticed. She began, on Diane's advice, to photograph him. Not obviously. Not with her phone. With a small camera Diane had given her, the size of a lipstick, that recorded video in short loops. She filmed him at dinner when he took calls he shouldn't have taken at dinner. She filmed him in the study when he thought she was asleep. She filmed the men who came to the house at odd hours and left with briefcases heavier than they had arrived with. She did not sleep well. She had expected that. What she had not expected was that she would not feel bad about not sleeping well. Some nights she lay next to Victor in the dark and listened to him breathe and thought, with a strange flat calm, this is the last winter you will ever sleep in this bed and not know you are being watched. The first time Evelyn heard the name Adrian Volkov, she was in the back of a car. It was a Thursday in late January. Snow on the ground. She had been at Diane's office for 3 hours reviewing the final draft of the divorce petition, which was not going to be filed for another 6 weeks because the timing mattered, and Diane was a woman who understood timing. Evelyn was being driven home by a driver Diane had hired, a quiet man named Miguel, who never asked questions and never met her eyes in the rearview mirror. Halfway back, Diane called. Evelyn. Yes. There's a complication. The shipping company in the Gulf. The one in the ledger. Yes. It turns out it's not his. What do you mean, it's not his? I mean it belongs to someone else. Victor's been skimming off a pipeline that is not his pipeline. And the someone else is not a man who handles that kind of thing through a court of law. Evelyn watched the snow drift past the window. Who? His name is Adrian Volkov. Evelyn had heard the name. Not clearly. Not in any way she could have placed, the way you hear a church bell through a storm, far off. A sound that is definitely a sound, but not a sound you could describe. She had heard it at a party once, maybe. She had heard it in a newspaper headline she had not read twice. Tell me about him. Diane was quiet for a moment. He's 41 years old. He was born in a country that no longer exists under the name it had when he was born. He came to the city when he was 22, and he was a driver for a man named Kasparian. And by the time he was 28, Kasparian was dead, and Volkov had Kasparian's business and 3 of Kasparian's lieutenants working for him. He owns, legally, a shipping company, a construction firm, 2 restaurants in the meatpacking district, and a gallery in Chelsea. He owns, not legally, a great deal more. He has never been arrested. He has never been charged. 3 men who have investigated him have lost their jobs, and 1 has lost his house. He does not do interviews. He does not attend charity events. He is not in any society column. If you typed his name into a search engine right now, you would get 8 results, and 6 of them would be a different man. What does he look like? Evelyn. What does he look like, Diane? Another pause. He looks, Diane said carefully, like a man who has never in his life been told he could not have something. Evelyn watched the snow. Does he know about Victor? He is starting to. How do you know? Because, Diane said, Adrian Volkov and I had dinner last night. Evelyn did not answer for a long time. Long enough that Miguel glanced at her once in the rear view, the first time he had ever done it, and then looked away. Diane. Yes. I want to meet him. Evelyn, that is not what I called to suggest. I know, Evelyn said. I want to meet him anyway. Bah. Diane did not say yes that night. She did not say yes for 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, Evelyn did not bring it up again because Evelyn had learned in 7 years of being a wife to a man who hated being pushed that the fastest way to make a person come toward you was to stop walking toward them. On the 15th day, Diane called. Saturday, 7:30, an address I'll text you. Don't be late. Don't bring anything. Don't wear anything he could pull off and sell. Don't mention Victor until he does. How will I know when he does? You'll know. Evelyn went to the restaurant on Saturday. It was not a restaurant. It was a room above a restaurant, reached by a staircase at the back that smelled like lemon and hot oil. And when she came up into it, there was only 1 table in the middle of the floor, and 1 man sitting at it, and 2 men standing by the window who did not look at her and did not look away from her at the same time, which was a thing she had not known was possible. The man at the table stood up when she came in. He was tall, taller than Victor, which was the first thing she noticed because Victor was 6'1" and proud of it. Adrian Volkov was something past that, in a black suit with no tie and a white shirt open at the collar, and he had the kind of face that did not belong to any specific decade. It could have been the face of a man in a photograph from 1920. It could have been the face of a man in a photograph from 2 centuries before that. He had very dark eyes and a mouth that did not seem to know how to smile in a social way. Mrs. Hart. Miss Marsh, she said. I'm using my maiden name now. He considered that. Then he nodded, 1 small nod, as if she had passed something he had been waiting to see if she would pass. Ms. Marsh, please. Sit. She sat. He sat. A waiter came up the stairs with a bottle of wine that had no label and 2 glasses, set them down, and went away without a word. Adrian poured. His hands were steady. His nails were clean. There was a small white scar along the side of his right thumb that she would, much later, ask him about, and he would tell her, and she would not believe the answer, and he would smile and not correct her. Diane tells me, he said, that your husband has been stealing from me for a little over 3 years. I believe that's what the ledger suggests. You found the ledger? Yes. How? He thinks I don't open the safe. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. And do you? I opened it last August, Evelyn said. I've opened it 41 times since. Something moved behind Adrian's eyes. Not a smile. Something more careful than a smile. The thing a person does with their face when they realize the person across from them is not the person they were prepared to meet. 41 times. I keep count. Why? Because the day I stop keeping count, Evelyn said, is the day I've started lying to myself about what I'm doing. Adrian set down the bottle. Miss Marsh, he said, why did you want to meet me? Evelyn had rehearsed this. She had rehearsed it in the car and in the elevator and for 2 weeks before either of those. She had written versions of the answer on a piece of paper in her bathroom and burned them in the sink. She opened her mouth to give the rehearsed answer, and then she did something she had not planned to do, which was tell the truth. Because my husband took 7 years of my life and spent them on a woman 26 years old who calls him baby in text messages, and I could ruin him in a courtroom for $2 million and a house in the Hamptons, and that is not enough. I want to ruin him in a way he can feel. I want him to be the story people tell about what happens to men who mistake their wives for furniture. I can do part of it. I cannot do all of it. You can do all of it. I am here to ask you what it would cost me. Adrian Volkov looked at her. He looked at her for so long that one of the men by the window shifted his weight, and Adrian lifted one finger without turning his head, and the man stopped shifting. Ms. Marsh, Adrian said very quietly, you have misunderstood the terms of this meeting. Evelyn's heart did not move. She had, she realized later, already accepted that it would not move again tonight for anything. She had spent all the fears she had. How? You came here thinking I would want to be paid. I came here thinking I would want to hire you. Hire me. Your husband has been stealing from me. I have known this for some time. I have been, as Diane might have told you, starting to do something about it. What I did not have until Diane put your name in front of me was a person inside his house with a key to his safe and a camera in her purse. I did not have a person who had been memorizing the angle of his pens. He leaned forward slightly. His voice did not change. You are not here to ask me for a favor, Ms. Marsh. You are here to find out whether we want the same thing. And if we do, I am not going to take money from you. I am going to offer you a share. Evelyn sat very still. A share of what? A share of what is left of him when we are done. She did not answer right away. She picked up the wine glass. She took a sip. It was very good wine. She did not know anything about wine, and she had never been the kind of woman who pretended to, but she knew enough to know that this was wine a person did not buy. This was wine a person was given. Mr. Volkov. Adrian. Adrian, I have a condition. Name it. When it is done, he cannot know it was me. Not in the beginning, not in the middle. He can only know at the end. I want him to spend every day until that night thinking I ran. I want him to tell his girlfriend I was weak. I want him to laugh about me at his own parties. And then I want to walk into a room where he is standing, and I want him to understand in 1 second that every good thing he has lost in the last 6 months was my hand on the knife. Adrian watched her. Ms. Marsh. Evelyn. Evelyn, that is not a condition. That is the plan. She almost smiled. She did not. She had stopped smiling for anyone else's benefit months ago, and she was not going to start again tonight for a man she had known for 11 minutes. Then we understand each other. We understand each other. She did not go home that night. She went to a hotel Diane had booked under the name Evelyn Marsh, and she sat in a chair by the window in a dress that cost more than the room, and she drank a cup of tea that a waiter had brought up without her asking, and she watched the snow fall on a city that was about to belong to her in a way she did not yet have words for. At 2 in the morning, her phone buzzed. It was Victor. Where are you? Marguerite says you didn't come home. Evelyn looked at the message. She turned the phone face down on the windowsill. She did not answer it, not that night, not the next morning. She did not answer it for 6 days, and when she finally did, she wrote 3 words and nothing more. I needed air. He wrote back within 90 seconds. Sweetheart, you scared me. Come home. I'll be better. I promise. Evelyn read the message twice. Then she deleted it, and she set the phone down, and she picked up the house phone in the hotel, and she called Diane. He's scared. Good, Diane said. That's exactly where we want him. Diane. Yes. I want to come back to the house tomorrow. I want to act like I was having some kind of episode. I want to cry at him. I want to let him hold me. I want him to think he's getting me back. Why? Because, Evelyn said, I have 47 more documents I want to photograph, and he is going to be very careful with me for exactly as long as he thinks I'm fragile, and I am going to use every minute of it. There was a long pause on the line. When Diane spoke again, her voice was different, softer, almost proud. Evelyn Marsh, she said, where in God's... Diane stopped herself. She did not finish the sentence. She started it again. Where have you been hiding? Evelyn looked at her reflection in the dark window of the hotel. A woman in a dress. A woman who had stopped being furniture sometime in the last 4 months and had only now, at 2 a.m. in a hotel she had never been to, looked up and noticed. In that house, she said. I've been hiding in that house. She came home on a Monday. She cried in the foyer in the way she had practiced, which was not very hard because some of the tears were real, though not for the reasons Victor thought. He held her. He smelled like another woman's shampoo, and he told her he loved her, and he meant it in the specific way men like him mean it, which is to say, he meant the words the way he meant them when he said them, and he would mean something else by them tomorrow, and he would not remember the difference. She let him hold her. She put her face against his shoulder, and she watched, over his shoulder, the doorway to his study, where the safe sat behind a painting of a horse his grandfather had bought in 1958. And she thought about how many times she was going to open that safe in the next 3 weeks. I'm sorry, she whispered into his shirt. I don't know what came over me. I was just so tired. Shh, Victor said, stroking her hair. Shh, you don't have to explain. You've been under so much stress. Let me take care of you. Let me take care of everything. Okay, Evelyn whispered. Okay, Victor. Take care of everything. He didn't hear what she meant. He wasn't listening for it. He kissed the top of her head and he told her he loved her, and he went into his study and he closed the door, and Evelyn stood in the foyer and pressed her palm flat against the wall, and she waited until her breathing was her own again. Then she went upstairs. She drew a bath. She got in. She sat in the water for a long time. She did not cry in the bath. She had cried enough for the day, in the foyer where it counted. Now she was off the stage. Now she was just a woman in warm water, thinking. She thought about Adrian Volkov's hands on the wine bottle, the steadiness of them. She thought about the scar on his thumb. She thought about the way he had said her name, Evelyn, like it was a word he had decided to keep. She did not know what she felt. She was not sure yet that it was anything. She had been in love once, at 23, and she remembered what that had felt like, and this was not that. This was something slower, something that had not yet decided what it was going to be. She got out of the bath. She dried off. She put on a robe. She walked to the window and looked out over the lawn, where the snow had melted in patches and a crow was picking at something near the hedges. Downstairs in the study, Victor was laughing at something on the phone. Evelyn listened. She did not know the exact shape of what was coming. She knew only the outline of it. A ballroom somewhere, months from now. A pair of doors that would open. A man beside her. A husband who would look up from a glass of champagne and see her, really see her, for the first time in 7 years. In the 1 second before he understood that he had already lost. She did not smile even then, alone by the window. She was saving it. The crow finished with whatever it had found in the hedges and lifted off the lawn in a black scrap against the gray sky, and Evelyn turned away from the window. Downstairs, Victor was still laughing. She dressed slowly. A soft gray sweater, jeans she had not worn in 2 years because Victor had once said, in that offhand way he had of saying things that cut, that jeans made her look like somebody's mother. She pulled her hair back. She did not put on makeup. She wanted to look like a woman who had fallen apart and was putting herself back together piece by piece, because that was the story Victor needed to tell himself about her now. And she was going to make it easy for him. She went downstairs. Victor was off the phone. He was in the kitchen, standing at the island, pouring himself a scotch at 4 p.m, which was new. He used to wait until 6. He used to make a point of it, actually, tapping his watch in the face of any guest who offered him a drink before the hour, saying, I'm not a savage. Now he poured himself 2 fingers of something amber at 4 o'clock on a Monday and drank half of it before he noticed his wife standing in the doorway. Hey, he said. He set the glass down. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, another new thing. You're up. You feeling better? A little. Come here. She came. He pulled her against his chest and held her there for a second, and she let her arms hang at her sides for the length of a breath before she remembered to put them around him. He did not seem to notice the delay. I was thinking, he said into her hair, maybe we should go somewhere. A weekend. That place in the mountains you liked. Just the 2 of us. Okay. Yeah? Okay, Victor. He pulled back and looked at her. For a second she thought he was going to actually see her, actually noticed that the face looking up at him was not quite the face he had married, that something behind the eyes had moved 6 inches to the left of where it had always been. But he didn't. He saw what he wanted to see, which was a tired wife who was going to forgive him for whatever she didn't quite know he had done. And he smiled the smile he had used to close $300 million worth of deals in his life. And he kissed her forehead. "I'll have Marguerite pack. We'll leave Friday." "Friday's good. I love you. You know that." "I know." He didn't notice she hadn't said it back. He picked up his glass and walked out of the kitchen, and Evelyn stood at the island and watched him go, and she thought, "You are so easy. You were always going to be so easy. I just hadn't started looking." Marguerite came in from the pantry carrying a bag of onions. She stopped when she saw Evelyn. She was 61 years old, Marguerite, and she had been in this house longer than Evelyn had, and there was a thing in her eyes sometimes that Evelyn had never quite been able to place. "Mrs. Hart, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Marguerite." "You weren't home?" "No." Marguerite set the onions down on the counter. She did not reach for a knife. She looked at Evelyn for a long second, and something in her face softened and hardened at the same time. "My sister," Marguerite said. "She left her husband in 1987. She did it on a Tuesday. She told me afterwards that she had been planning it for 4 years, and that nobody had known, not her sister, not her mother, not her priest. She said the hardest part was not the leaving. The hardest part was the 4 years before the leaving, when she had to kiss him every night like she meant it." Evelyn did not move. "Marguerite, I am not asking a question, Mrs. Hart. I am telling you a thing about my sister." "Why?" Marguerite picked up the knife. She began slicing an onion with the practiced speed of a woman who had sliced 10,000 onions in this kitchen. "Because my sister is 74 now, and she lives in a little house in Lisbon, and she has a garden, and she grows tomatoes that she sends me pictures of. And the man she left died alone in a hospital in 1999. And she did not go to the funeral, and she does not think about him. And I have worked in this house for 11 years, Mrs. Hart. I have ears. I'm only telling you that if you are planning something, I have not seen it, and I will not see it, and I will continue to not see it for as long as it takes." Evelyn stood very still at the island. "Marguerite." "Yes." "Thank you. Do you want coffee?" "Yes." "How do you take it?" Evelyn almost laughed. It came up in her throat like a small hard thing, and she swallowed it back down. "With milk? A little sugar?" "I thought so," Marguerite said, without looking up from the onion. "I will bring it to the library." The weekend in the mountains was 4 days away, which gave Evelyn 4 nights with the safe and 4 days to make calls from a phone Diane had given her that did not show up on any bill Victor would ever see. She used the time the way a surgeon uses time. On Tuesday, she photographed 17 pages of what looked like a loan agreement between Hale Capital and a shell company in the British Virgin Islands that Diane had already traced 2 weeks earlier back to an address in Nevada that led to another address in Delaware, that led, finally, to a man Victor had been to law school with who had died in a boating accident 2 years ago. A dead man who was still, somehow, signing documents. On Wednesday, she photographed a series of emails Victor had printed out for reasons she could not guess. Men made mistakes like that. They were careful about their digital lives, and then they printed things out to read on the plane and left them in desk drawers. The emails were from Scarlett Vane. Not all of them were the kind that would have hurt Evelyn at 24. Some of them were worse than that. Some of them were about money. Scarlett, it turned out, was not just a girlfriend. Scarlett had been moved into a senior role at Hale Capital in June, and in July, she had begun signing off on transfers to accounts whose names Evelyn had now seen in the ledger in the safe. Scarlett knew. Scarlett was in it. Evelyn photographed the emails. She put them back exactly where they had been. She closed the drawer. She went to bed, and she lay next to her husband in the dark, and she thought, with a strange clean calm, she is not an innocent girl he is using. She is a partner he thinks he has. I can use that. On Thursday, she drove into the city in her own car because Diane had said it was time to be seen normally, to establish the pattern of a wife going into the city for the things wives went into the city for. She went to the hair salon. She went to Bergdorf's. She bought a pair of earrings she did not need and a dress she was never going to wear because the credit card statements needed to tell a story. In the afternoon, she went to a gallery in Chelsea she had been to twice before, years ago, and she stood in front of a large painting of a man's back walking away from the viewer, and she did not hear the footsteps behind her until they stopped. "Ms. Marsh!" She did not turn around at first. She looked at the painted man's shoulders in the frame. Then she turned. Adrian Volkov was in a dark coat and no scarf, and his hair was wet with melted snow, and he did not look like a man who had come to this gallery by accident, because he was not a man who did anything by accident. "Mr. Volkov." "Adrian." "Adrian, this is your gallery." "Yes." "Diane told me." "Good." He stood a respectful distance from her. Not close, not far. The distance a man stands from a woman when he has decided not to crowd her and is giving her the space to decide whether to be crowded. "How is he?" Adrian said. "He's planning a trip to the mountains." "With you?" "With me." Adrian looked at the painting. "Do you like it?" "I don't know." Honest answer. "I don't know much about paintings." "Neither do I," Adrian said. "I bought this gallery from a man who owed me a favor. I kept it because I liked the quiet. I walk through the rooms sometimes at night after everyone has left. I have never bought a painting I liked. I have bought 3 paintings I thought I should like, and one of them is in my apartment, and I still do not like it." Evelyn looked at him sideways. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," Adrian said, "you're going to spend the next 6 weeks lying to your husband's face, and I do not want you to spend any of this afternoon lying to mine. So I am telling you I do not know anything about paintings, and you are telling me you do not know anything about paintings. And now we are 2 people who do not know anything about paintings, standing in a room full of them, and that is all we are." She was quiet for a moment. "The trip." "Yes. He's going to try to fix things. He's going to be careful with me. He's going to tell me he loves me a lot. I'm going to say it back." "I know." "Does it bother you?" She said it before she thought about it. She almost took it back. She didn't. Adrian looked at the painting, not at her. "Evelyn." "Yes. We are not at a point in our acquaintance where my feelings about your marriage are any of your concern, and we may not ever be at that point. That is a decision you will make. Or not make. I am not a man who presses." "You didn't answer the question." "No," he said. "I didn't." She almost smiled. She didn't. They stood in front of the painting for another minute, and then Adrian put his hands in his coat pockets and took a half step back. "When you come back from the mountains, I want you to come to the restaurant again. Same time, same table. There are things to discuss." "All right." "And Evelyn." "Yes. If at any point you decide this has become more than you are willing to do, you can stop. The money you would have walked away with under the prenup, I will personally match it. You can go. You can disappear. I will never come looking. Your husband will never know you spoke to me. That is not a threat. That is an offer. I want you to hold it in your hand for the next 6 weeks and know it is there." Evelyn looked at him for a long time. "Why are you telling me that?" "Because," Adrian said, "I have known a great many people who could not tell the difference between wanting a thing and being able to pay for it, and I do not want you to be one of them. You are paying with your own hands. I would like you to remember, while you pay, that you have the option to set it down." "I won't set it down." "I know." "Then why say it?" "Because," he said, "I wanted you to know I had said it." He inclined his head, a small nod, and he walked away through the gallery, and she watched him go, and she stood in front of the painting of the man's back for another 10 minutes without really seeing it. The mountain lodge was Victor's grandfather's, or had been, and Victor had inherited it the same way he had inherited the watch on his wrist and the instinct to believe he was owed things. It sat on 12 acres of pine and granite in a part of the state where the nearest neighbor was a mile away and the nearest town was farther than that. The housekeeper who took care of it in the off-season had been given the week off, and Victor had driven them up himself on a Friday afternoon, with a bag of groceries in the back and a bottle of wine between the seats, and he had been, for 2 hours of that drive, the man she had married. He had told her stories from the office. He had asked her about the book on her lap. He had reached over once at a red light and taken her hand and kissed the back of it. And it had almost undone her, because the body does not know what the mind has decided, and the body remembered being loved by him, and the body was slower to catch up. But the mind caught up. The mind always caught up. They arrived at the lodge at dusk. Victor built a fire. He poured 2 glasses of the wine. He sat next to her on the long leather couch in front of the fire, and he talked for a while about nothing. And then he said carefully, the way a man tests a stare he is not sure will hold him. "I know I haven't been present." Evelyn watched the fire. "I've been distracted. The deal with the maritime group has been eating me alive. I haven't been a good husband. I want you to know I see it. I'm going to be better." "Okay." "Evelyn." "Yes." "Look at me." She looked at him. His face in the firelight was the face she had loved at 24. It was genuinely that face. Men like Victor did not stop being handsome. They became handsome in a different way, a sharper way, a way that took into account the things they had done. He was 43. He had lines around his eyes now that looked like concern and were really just the print of 20 years of squinting at screens. He was beautiful. He had always been beautiful. It had been part of how he had gotten away with everything. "I love you," he said. "I know. Do you love me?" The fire cracked. A piece of the log split and fell forward against the screen, and sparks went up. "Yes," Evelyn said. It was, in a particular way, not a lie. She had loved him. The past tense was doing a great deal of work in the sentence, but the word itself was accurate, and she let him have it. Victor exhaled. She felt it go out of him. He pulled her against his chest, and he held her there for a long time. And she listened to his heart through his sweater, and she thought about how his heart was going to keep beating like this, steady and pleased with itself, for the next 6 weeks, while the ground underneath him was taken apart one shovelful at a time. She was not proud of what she thought next. She thought, "I hope it hurts. Not in the way rage hurts, not in the way a blow hurts, in the slower way. The way of waking up one morning in a house that is no longer yours, in a city where no one will take your calls, and understanding, sitting up in a bed you will soon lose, that you have become a person whose name other people lower their voices to say." She let him hold her. She closed her eyes. "I love you too," she said. She said it clearly. She said it so he would believe it. He did. They came back from the mountains on a Monday. Victor was, in his way, happy. He had decided something about their marriage over the weekend, which was that it was fine, which was what he had decided about every difficult thing in his life for 25 years, and the decision always held until it didn't. Evelyn went to Diane's office on Tuesday. Diane had a new stack of documents on her desk. She had reading glasses on. She did not look up when Evelyn came in. "Scarlet Vane," Diane said. "Yes?" "She has a sister." "I didn't know that." "The sister is a paralegal at a firm in Boston. She is not close with Scarlet. In fact, she hates Scarlet because Scarlet slept with her fiancé in 2019, and the engagement ended, and the sister has not spoken to Scarlet since, except for one phone call on their mother's birthday 2 years ago, which lasted 8 minutes and ended with the sister hanging up." Evelyn sat down. "How do you know this?" "Because," Diane said, "Adrian has a woman who finds things out. She is very good. She has been finding things out since Sunday." Evelyn set her bag down. "What's the sister's name?" "Delia Vane. She's 30. She is, by every account, a decent person who has spent her whole life being the less interesting sibling of a woman everyone wanted to look at. She is angry about it in the quiet way that kind of person is angry. She is not going to help us for money. She is, however, going to help us if we give her the opportunity to watch her sister lose something without having to be in the room when it happens." "You want me to talk to her?" "No," Diane said. "I want you to write her a letter." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "A letter?" "Handwritten. On the paper I am going to give you, you're going to introduce yourself as Evelyn Marsh. You're going to tell her you are a woman whose husband has been having an affair with her sister for 9 months. You're going to say nothing about the business, nothing about the money, nothing about Adrian. You're going to ask her, as one woman who has been humiliated by Scarlet Vane to another, whether she would be willing to meet you for coffee." "Why coffee?" "Big day." "'Cause coffee is a meeting a decent person agrees to and a suspicious person doesn't. If she agrees to coffee, she is a person who would like to see her sister lose something. If she does not agree to coffee, she is a person who will protect her sister in spite of hating her, and we will know to leave her alone. And if she agrees," Diane took off the reading glasses. Then you are going to meet her, and you are not going to lie to her, and you are going to find out what she knows about Scarlett's life that her sister does not know she knows. Sisters know things, even sisters who do not speak, especially sisters who do not speak. Evelyn nodded slowly. Okay. One more thing, Diane said, and this is important. Yes. If at any point the sister seems to be wavering, if at any point she starts defending Scarlett, you stop. You thank her for her time. You pay the check. You walk away. You do not push. You do not argue. We are not in the business of making people do things against their nature. Are you clear? I'm clear. Write the letter tonight. Use your maiden name. Use a return address I will give you. Delia Vane will get it on Thursday. Evelyn stood up to leave, and at the door she paused. Diane. Yes. Has Adrian asked about me? Diane looked at her over the tops of her glasses, which she had put back on. Evelyn, I am a divorce lawyer. I am not a matchmaker. Write the letter. Evelyn almost laughed. She left. She wrote the letter that night in the small study off the upstairs hall that Victor had given her as a decorating project in the first year of the marriage and had then never once entered. She wrote it by hand, in blue ink, on the heavy cream paper Diane had given her, and when she was finished, she read it back 3 times. It was a good letter. It was not a dramatic letter. It did not ask for pity. It did not call Scarlett names. It said, in effect, I am the wife. My name is Evelyn. I understand you have no obligation to me. I am writing to you because I believe we may be the only 2 people in the world who have ever been reduced by the same woman, and I would like, if you are willing, to have a cup of coffee with you. You are not the enemy of my life. You are, if anything, a kind of cousin to it. Please consider. She signed it Evelyn Marsh. She sealed the envelope. She walked down the back stairs to the kitchen, where Marguerite was cleaning a pot, and she said quietly, Marguerite, on your way home, would you mind dropping this in a mailbox, not the one at the end of the driveway? Marguerite did not look at the envelope. Of course, Mrs. Hart. Thank you. Is it a difficult letter? It's an honest one. Marguerite nodded once. Those are the hardest, she said, and she went back to her pot. Delia Vane wrote back 6 days later. The reply came to a post office box Diane had set up in Evelyn's maiden name, in a town Evelyn had never been to, and Diane drove out and got it and brought it to Evelyn's car in the parking lot of a supermarket on a Tuesday afternoon. Diane handed it through the window without a word. Evelyn opened it in the car. The letter was short. Evelyn, I'll have coffee with you. I won't tell my sister. There's a place called the Blue Kettle on Hanover Street in Boston. Tuesday afternoons at 3 I am there anyway, because I go on my lunch break. Come any Tuesday. You will recognize me because I look like Scarlett if Scarlett had eaten a hamburger once in the last 10 years. Delia. Evelyn laughed. It was a real laugh, the first one in weeks, and it surprised her so much she looked around the parking lot to make sure no one had seen. She drove home. She made dinner. She kissed Victor when he came in. She asked him about his day. He told her about the maritime deal, which was not closing on the schedule he'd wanted it to, and she listened and nodded and asked the follow-up questions a good wife asks. And the whole time she was thinking, on Tuesday, I am driving to Boston. Jazz. She met Delia Vane at 3 o'clock the following Tuesday. The Blue Kettle was a small, narrow coffee house with exposed brick and uneven floors and the kind of mismatched furniture that was either deliberate or the result of a very long slide. Delia was at a table in the back. She did, in fact, look like Scarlett. She also, in fact, looked like a woman who had eaten food with pleasure at least occasionally in her life, and the difference made her face kinder. Evelyn sat down. She did not extend her hand. Delia did not extend hers. You drove up? Yes. That's a long drive to meet a stranger. I know. Delia looked at her for a long second. You're prettier than I thought you'd be, she said. Scarlett always said you were a nothing. She said you had good skin and no personality. That's what she said to my husband. I've read the texts. Delia winced. Oh, wow. Okay. That's already worse than I was expecting. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Jesus, you're not the one who wrote them. The waiter came. Delia ordered a black coffee. Evelyn ordered a tea she was not going to drink. The waiter went away. The music in the coffee house was something with horns, a woman singing in a language Evelyn didn't know, and the sound of it made the silence at their table feel a little less naked. "Why did you write to me?" Delia said. "Because I don't want to hurt you, and I might be about to." Delia's mouth did something complicated. "Go on. Your sister isn't only sleeping with my husband. She's working for him, at his company. She's been promoted into a role where she signs off on certain kinds of transfers. Some of those transfers are not, strictly speaking, legal. I'm not going to explain the details. I'm going to tell you that in the next 6 weeks, something is going to happen to my husband's business, and your sister is going to be in a great deal of trouble. And I needed you to know in advance, because you did not do anything to deserve finding out on the news." Delia sat very still. "Is she going to prison?" "I don't know. Maybe. Probably not if she's clever. She might be asked to explain things. She might lose her job. She might lose the ability to work in finance. She is not, as far as I understand it, the person the story will be about. My husband is the person the story will be about. But your sister is not going to come out of this untouched." Delia looked down at the table. "Are you the one doing this?" "I'm part of it." "Why are you telling me?" Evelyn took a breath. "Because when I was writing you the letter, I thought about what it would be like to be you in 6 weeks and turn on the television and see your sister's face on it and have no one to call. I have a mother who doesn't speak to me either. I know what it is to watch a piece of your family go through something from a long way away. I am not asking you to warn her. I am not asking you to do anything. I am telling you so that when it happens, you will have had a week to be ready instead of a second." Delia did not speak for a long time. The waiter brought the coffee and the tea. Delia wrapped her hands around the coffee cup like it was cold in the room, which it wasn't. "She called me once," Delia said. "In October. I didn't pick up. She left a message. She said she was seeing someone. She said he was married, but that it was complicated, and she thought he was going to leave his wife, and she wanted to tell someone. She wanted to tell me. I deleted the message. I didn't call her back." "Delia, I think about it a lot. That message. I think about it when I can't sleep." "You don't owe her anything." "I know I don't. That's not the problem. The problem is I didn't want to be the sister who deleted the message. I wanted to be the sister who picked up, and I'm not." Evelyn was quiet. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be." "I am anyway." Delia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand fast, like she was embarrassed to have done it. She picked up the coffee and drank half of it in one swallow. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. That's not true." "It's mostly true. I'll tell you what's not. There's a chance, a small chance, that in the next few weeks, your sister is going to do something reckless. If she panics, if she thinks my husband is going to throw her to the wolves, she might call someone, she might try to leave the country, she might do a stupid thing. If she calls you, I don't need you to tell me what she said. I need you to tell me that she called. One sentence, she called me, nothing more. That's it. That's it. And what do I get?" Evelyn looked at her. "You get a cup of coffee with a woman who understands you. You get a letter later telling you I'm sorry for what's about to happen. You get, for the rest of your life, the knowledge that you are not the sister who deleted the message twice." Delia laughed. It was a small, bitter laugh. "You're good," she said. "You know that? You're really good." "I didn't used to be." "I believe that," Delia said. "You have the face of somebody who just figured out what they were." Evelyn did not answer. She sipped her tea. It was too hot. She drank it anyway. "I'll do it," Delia said. "The one sentence. If she calls. I won't tell her I spoke to you. I won't warn her. She didn't warn me, and I'm not a saint." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I wanted to do it before you asked." They sat for another 20 minutes. They did not talk about Scarlett again. Delia told her about her job, which she hated, and about a man she had been seeing who she was not sure about, and about a dog she was thinking of adopting. Evelyn listened. When Evelyn talked, she talked about a garden she was thinking about planting in the spring, which was a lie, and about a book she was reading which was true. They paid separately. They walked to the door together. At the door, Delia stopped. Evelyn. Yes. When it happens. Whatever it is. I hope you sleep that night. Evelyn considered the sentence. I don't think I will, she said. Good, Delia said. That means you're still a person. She left. Evelyn stood in the doorway of the Blue Kettle for a second, watching her go, a thin woman in a gray coat walking up Hanover Street with her hands in her pockets, and then Evelyn turned the other way and walked to her car. Driving home that night, in the dark, on the long interstate back toward the life she was almost done with, Evelyn let herself cry for about 20 minutes. She cried for Delia Vane, who was going to go home to an apartment she could barely afford and pour a glass of wine and sit on her couch and think about a message she had deleted 4 months ago. She cried for Marguerite's sister in Lisbon, who had kissed a man every night for 4 years like she meant it. She cried for the woman she had been at 24, in a white dress in Tuscany, who had thought she was marrying a good man because at 24 she had not yet understood that men like Victor looked exactly like good men, and that was the trick. She did not cry for herself, not the self she was now. That one had other things to do. When she stopped crying, she pulled off at a rest stop and washed her face in a gas station bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror under the buzzing fluorescent. Her eyes were red. Her mouth was set. She did not look like a woman who had just had a hard conversation. She looked like a woman who had just had a necessary one. She got back in the car. She drove the rest of the way home in silence. No music, no radio. When she pulled into the driveway at Ashbury Lane, the lights were on in the study. Victor was still up. Waiting, probably. Worried, probably, in the thin way he worried, which was the way a man worries about an investment that has been acting strangely. She cut the engine. She sat in the dark car for a minute. She looked up at the lit window of the study, at the shape of her husband moving behind the curtain, and she thought, very clearly, you have 5 weeks left of your life as you know it. You will not see a single day of it coming. She got out of the car. She walked into the house. She put her keys on the hook by the door. Victor called her name from the study, and she called back, cheerful, I'm home. And she went up the stairs to wash her face a second time, because she still smelled faintly of a coffee house in Boston and a conversation he would never be allowed to know had happened. She washed her face in the upstairs bathroom and stood there for a minute holding the hand towel against her cheeks, listening to Victor's footsteps come up the stairs. She heard him stop outside the door. She heard him not knock. She heard him decide not to and keep walking to the bedroom. That was a small new thing. He did not used to hesitate at doors. She hung the towel. She turned off the light. She went to the bedroom and found him already in bed, on his phone, the blue glow of it on the underside of his chin making him look for 1 second like a mask of himself. He put the phone down when she came in. He smiled the smile. How was Marcy? She had told him that morning that she was driving to see an old college roommate named Marcy, who lived in a town Victor had never been to, because Victor had never listened closely enough to her college stories to know that there was no Marcy. She's good. She's Marcy. Still with that sculptor. Still with him. God help her. She got into bed. He reached for her, absent, the way he reached for the television remote, and she let him hold her against his chest for about 30 seconds before she turned onto her other side and said she was tired from the drive. He accepted it. He went back to his phone. She lay there with her back to him and she listened to him type. She knew exactly what he was typing. 3 weeks ago, she had memorized the sound of his thumbs on the screen, the particular rhythm of the messages he sent to Scarlett, shorter than the messages he sent to his assistant, faster than the messages he sent to his lawyer. She had trained herself to hear the difference. She could have named it in the dark now, like a mother names a child's cry. It was a Scarlett rhythm tonight. Evelyn closed her eyes. She thought about Delia Vane in a gray coat walking up Hanover Street. She thought about a message in a phone that had been deleted 4 months ago. She fell asleep faster than she expected to, and the sleep was not good, but it was sleep, and she had taken to being grateful for it in whatever shape it came. The next morning, she drove into the city to see Diane, and Diane was not alone. Adrian was in the corner of the office in a chair Evelyn had never seen anybody sit in, reading a newspaper. An actual newspaper, folded, the kind nobody read anymore. He did not look up when she came in. He finished a paragraph first. Then he folded the paper in half and set it down on the side table and stood. Ms. Marsh. Evelyn? Evelyn? He did not shake her hand. He gestured to the chair across from Diane's desk. Diane was watching them over the tops of her reading glasses with an expression that was either amused or indigestion. Evelyn could never tell with Diane. Sit, Diane said. We have decisions to make. Evelyn sat. 3 things, Diane said. First, the Boston trip went well. Delia Vane is a tool we can use without breaking her. That is better than I expected. Good work. Thank you. Second, Adrian's people have been moving, and I am going to let him tell you about that, because I have been told, quite sternly, that the day my firm starts being used to explain what Adrian's people are doing is the day my firm will stop being my firm. Adrian did not smile. He did, though, lift one eyebrow a millimeter. Diane is exaggerating, he said. I have not been stern with Diane since 2017. You have been stern with me every month since 2017, Diane said. You simply do it so politely that I forget. It is a gift. I wish my ex-husband had it. Evelyn almost laughed. Adrian turned to her. Evelyn, for the last 6 weeks, people who work for me have been moving money around in ways that, on paper, look like your husband has been moving money around. Specifically, money that was not his to move. We have opened no new accounts. We have forged no signatures. We have simply redirected, by degrees, transactions that were already being routed through channels your husband believed were secure. By the time the right people look at the paper trail, your husband will appear to have been attempting to hide approximately $41 million of other people's money in ways that will not survive 10 minutes of scrutiny. Evelyn did not move. 41 million. 41. Whose? Adrian considered her. Some of it, he said, is mine. Some of it is money that was mine before it became your husband's. Some of it is money that was never mine and is being used for this exercise because the people it belongs to have agreed to lend it for a short time in exchange for certain courtesies later. You do not need to know which is which. You need to know that when the regulators open the file will be closed. He will not talk his way out. Regulators. Yes. That is the third thing. Adrian leaned forward slightly. His hands were folded in his lap. They were still. There is a woman at the commission named Priscilla Okafor. She has been looking at Hale Capital for 2.5 years. Your husband does not know this. She has not had enough to move on. She now will. In approximately 3 weeks, she will receive a package through a channel that appears to her to be an anonymous tip from a disgruntled employee. She will know it is not an anonymous tip. She will not care, because the package will be clean enough to use, and because she has wanted to take a bite out of a man like your husband for a long time. She is not a person we own. She is a person whose interests, for the moment, run parallel to ours. And Scarlett. Scarlett's name will be in the package. Evelyn let that sit for a second. How exposed. Enough that she will hire a lawyer, not enough that she will go to prison, unless she does something remarkably stupid, which is not impossible. The more likely outcome is that she is interviewed, is pressured to cooperate, gives up your husband in exchange for something resembling mercy, and spends the next 6 years of her life explaining to people she meets at dinner parties why she cannot get a job in finance. Evelyn watched him. He watched her back. Diane watched them both and sighed and picked up a pen. Evelyn, Diane said, this is the part of the conversation where I am obligated, as your lawyer, to tell you what you are about to be a part of and ask you if you want to continue. I know what I'm about to be a part of. Say it out loud anyway, please, for my own records. Evelyn took a breath. Kachoko. My husband is going to be publicly ruined. His company is going to be torn apart. His girlfriend is going to have her career burned down to the ankles. I'm going to walk away with, on paper, the prenup settlement, and off paper, a portion of what Adrian recovers, routed to me through means I am not going to ask about. My husband will not know, until the last night, that I had anything to do with any of it. That is what I am agreeing to. And you understand, Diane said, that there is no version of this in which he is not broken. I understand. And you want it? I want it? Diane clicked her pen. Noted. Adrian, who had not taken his eyes off Evelyn during the recitation, now did. He looked briefly at his hands. There is a last piece, he said. Yes. The night itself, the ballroom, the event. Victor's Spring Gala. Yes, hail, Capital's Spring Gala had been, for 5 years running, the event Victor cared most about in any calendar year. It was not the biggest party he threw. It was the one he threw for the people he wanted to be near. Senators who had not yet decided whether to run again. 2 former ambassadors. The head of a rating agency. A novelist whose politics Victor did not share, but whose dinner party presence Victor coveted. It was held, every year, in the ballroom of a hotel in Midtown that Victor's grandfather had helped finance in 1961. 800 guests. Black tie. Champagne. Victor, on a small stage at the front, giving a speech about leadership and stewardship and the long view, as if those words belonged to him. The date was April 11th. It was 32 days away. "You're going to walk in," Adrian said. "On my arm. The doors will open at 9:17, which is the moment your husband, based on 5 years of recordings of this event, will be at the microphone, in the middle of the toast. You will walk the length of the room. You will stop at the foot of the stage. You will not speak first. You will wait for him. He will speak. He will say something he should not say, because men in that position always do, and then you will say what needs to be said. At which point, the room will be yours." Evelyn listened. "Recordings of this event." "Yes. You have recordings of Victor's Spring Gala." "I have recordings of a great many things." "Why do you have recordings of Victor's Spring Gala?" Adrian was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Because 3 years ago, at that gala, a man I was interested in was on the guest list, and I wanted to know who he spoke to. I was not interested in your husband. Your husband was background. In the background, however, he said a number of things into the microphone that I found, in retrospect, useful." "What did he say?" Adrian looked at her. "You do not want me to answer that." "Yes, I do." "Evelyn, tell me." Adrian looked at Diane. Diane did not look up from her legal pad. Adrian looked back at Evelyn. "He made a joke," Adrian said carefully, "about his wife. He said, 'My wife is the reason I come home early. She's also the reason I don't stay long.' The room laughed. The recording captured it. I will not play it for you. I will not play it for you ever. I am telling you it exists because you asked, and because I am trying very hard, Evelyn, to be a person who does not lie to you." The room was very quiet. Evelyn looked down at her hands in her lap. Her wedding ring was not on her finger anymore. It had come off 2 weeks ago. She had put it in a drawer. Victor had not noticed. Men like Victor noticed a new shade of lipstick and did not notice the absence of a wedding ring. She had stopped being surprised. "Okay. Okay. Go on." Adrian nodded once the way he nodded. "You will wait for him at the foot of the stage. He will see you. He will see me. He will not, in the first 3 seconds, understand what he is seeing. Those 3 seconds are yours. You will use them." "How?" "You will smile." Evelyn almost laughed. Not from amusement. "I will smile. Yes. Not at him. At the room. You will smile as if you are there by invitation, which in fact you will be, because I will have arranged, quietly, for your name to be added to the guest list this afternoon. I will not be on the list. I do not need to be. No one at the door will ask me for a name. That is the part of this that is not yours to arrange. And when I speak, you will speak clearly. You will say what we have prepared. You will not improvise. You will not raise your voice. The power of what you say will come from its quietness. When a room that size goes silent, Evelyn, the quietest voice is the loudest. You have, I suspect, already guessed this because you are a woman who has spent 7 years learning to be quiet in rooms where loud men did not notice her. You will use what he taught you against him." Evelyn looked at him for a long time. "Adrian?" "Yes." That was a very long sentence. It was. "Are you giving me a speech?" Something happened at the corner of his mouth that was not quite a smile, but was the closest thing she had seen him come to one. "I am briefing you," he said. "The speech is the part at the ballroom." Diane clicked her pen again. "All right," Diane said. "Evelyn, go home. Kiss your husband. Lie to him for 32 more days. On April 11th, come to the apartment I have reserved for you at the Whitmore at 3 in the afternoon. A woman named Inez will meet you. She will do your hair and your makeup and put you into a dress that has already been selected. Adrian will meet you in the lobby at 8:40. The car will leave at 8:45. You will be in the ballroom at 9:17. Understood. Between now and then, you will not contact Adrian. You will not contact me except through the channels we have already established. You will not meet Delia Vane again. You will not go to Boston. You will not do anything that would look, to a person watching you, like a woman preparing for something. You will look like a woman who is slowly accepting that her marriage is fine. Understood. If your husband proposes a second trip to the mountains, go. Diane, I mean it. Go. Smile. Let him hold your hand. It will be worse for him later. The more tenderness he shows you in these 32 days, the worse it will be for him when he remembers. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Evelyn understood. Yes. Good. Adrian stood. He buttoned the second button of his jacket. He picked up his paper from the side table. Evelyn? Yes. If at any point between now and April 11th you change your mind, the offer I made you in the gallery still stands. I know. I am not pressing. I know. He looked at her for another second, and she thought for the first time that he looked almost tired, in the way a man looks tired when he has decided a thing and cannot unsay it to himself. And then the look was gone, and he nodded to Diane, and he left. When the door closed, Diane took off her glasses and set them on the desk and looked at Evelyn. Evelyn, don't. I'm going to say it anyway, just one sentence. Please don't. That man does not make that offer to people. I have known him for 9 years. I have never heard him say those words to another person in my hearing. Whatever you are doing to him, you are doing on purpose. And if you are not doing it on purpose, I am telling you now so that you do not wake up in 6 months having done it accidentally. Evelyn did not answer. All right, Diane said. I've said it. I will not say it again. Good. Go home. Diane. Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Diane said. The ballroom isn't for 32 days. 32 days is, in one way, a long time. In another, it is nothing. Evelyn lived them the way a person lives the last month of pregnancy, which is to say her body knew a date and her mind kept forgetting it and then remembering it again at odd moments, in the middle of washing a dish or picking up her dry cleaning. The worst of it was the tenderness. Victor, who had for 7 years been a man she had to chase across the width of a dinner table for a full sentence of conversation, had decided sometime between the mountain trip and the second week of March that they were going to be in love again. He brought her flowers on a Wednesday. He booked a restaurant he had never taken her to. He told her, one night in bed, that he thought they should talk about having a child, which they had talked about twice before in the marriage and which he had, both times, said it wasn't the right year for. Now it was apparently the right year. She said, let's see what the spring feels like, which was not a yes and not a no, and which Victor heard as a yes. Some of it, she could tell, was guilt. He had decided to be a better husband because he knew, in whatever room of himself he admitted such things, that he had been a bad one. Some of it was nerves. The maritime deal was bending under a weight Victor couldn't quite locate, and when Victor was nervous, he came home early, and he wanted to eat dinner with his wife, and he wanted her to be warm with him because warmth was a thing he could only get at home. And the home was, for reasons he did not understand, feeling cooler. Some of it was Scarlett. This one she only figured out late. Scarlett, the text had started to suggest, was not happy. Evelyn, who had been reading them every 2 or 3 days for months now with the same patience a person uses to follow a long-running television show, had begun to notice the shift around the end of February. Scarlett had stopped calling him baby in every message. Scarlett was asking more and more about the wife. When are you going to tell her? You said by Christmas. It's March, Victor. There were messages Victor had not answered for hours. There were messages Victor had answered with the kind of long paragraphs men send when they are trying to keep a person from leaving them. Scarlett was starting, in other words, to understand the shape of the thing she was in. Scarlett was starting to be afraid that the marriage she had been sleeping in the shadow of was never going to end, because men like Victor did not leave their wives. Men like Victor parked their wives in houses and visited their girlfriends on a schedule and expected both of them to cooperate. Scarlett was getting ready to do something. Evelyn photographed one text in particular, late in March, at 4 a.m, with Victor snoring beside her and the phone glowing under the sheet. Scarlett had written, I am not going to wait for you forever. You said this year, if you don't do it by summer, I'm done. Victor had written back, baby, not summer, by June. I promise. I'm working on something. Evelyn read the exchange 3 times. I'm working on something. She knew what it was. She had seen it in the papers in his study. He was moving money. Not a lot, not yet, but the beginnings of a pattern. He was preparing, slowly, the way men like Victor prepared to leave. He was going to wait until after the spring gala, because the gala was a thing he wanted to do while he still looked untouchable. And then, in the back half of April or the front half of May, he was going to come home one night and sit her down in the library and tell her that he had been thinking and that they had grown apart and that it was better for both of them if they were honest about where they were. He was going to offer her the Hamptons cottage and a monthly stipend and the chance to tell the story her way. He was going to assume she would take it, because she was furniture, and furniture did not push back. Evelyn lay in the dark, reading his messages on his phone, listening to him snore, and she thought, very calmly, "You beat me to it, Victor. You started planning to leave me 2 weeks ago. I started planning to leave you 8 months ago. I'm going to beat you to the door by 3 weeks." She put the phone back on his nightstand. She slept the best sleep she had slept in a year. On April 2nd, 9 days before the gala, Delia Vane called her. Evelyn was at the grocery store, which was funny in a way she would think about later, standing in the produce aisle holding a bag of lemons when her second phone vibrated in the inside pocket of her coat. Diane had given her the phone. The phone had one contact programmed in it, listed as D. Evelyn answered on the second ring. "Delia." "She called me." Evelyn held very still. "When?" "An hour ago. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I haven't listened to it." "You don't have to. Don't listen to it. You don't owe me anything else." "I listened to it." "Delia." She was crying. Evelyn, I've never heard her cry. Not since we were kids. She was saying, "I think I've done something stupid. I think I might need a lawyer. I think he's going to throw me to the wolves." She said your husband's name. She said it like she was already talking about him in the past tense. Evelyn walked, without quite deciding to, away from the lemons, toward a quieter corner of the store where the floral department thinned out into a rack of greeting cards. She stopped there. She pretended to look at a birthday card with a dog on the front. Did she say anything else? She said she was sorry. Not to me, to our mother. She said Mom is going to be so embarrassed. She said she was thinking about going to New York in a few days to see our mother before it happens. She said, "Don't tell anyone I called." Delia. "I'm not telling anyone. I'm telling you. That was the deal. 1 sentence, except I gave you 4. I'm sorry. I couldn't make it one." She was crying. "It's all right." "Evelyn, are you going to stop it?" Evelyn looked at the birthday card. The dog on the front was wearing a small paper hat. "Stop what?" "Whatever is happening. She's going to come apart. She's going to hurt herself or hurt him or do something nobody can fix. I can hear it. I'm her sister. I can hear it." Delia. "I am not asking you to save her. I'm asking you if you know what you are letting happen." Evelyn closed her eyes. She thought about Scarlett Vane in a navy dress at a Christmas party 2 years ago. She thought about the messages. She thought about the texts. She thought about women like Evelyn don't ask questions. She's furniture. She thought about a $41 million money trail that was only going to catch the person who signed for it, and Scarlett had signed. Scarlett had signed because she had believed she was Victor's partner, and she was not his partner. She was his pen. Delia, listen to me. I'm listening. Your sister is not a good person. I'm not going to say she is, but she is a person, and she did something stupid, and she is going to pay for it, and she does not deserve to die for it. So I am going to tell you a thing, and you are going to decide what to do with it. Okay? If she goes to New York this weekend, if she sees your mother, if she stays at your mother's apartment on Sunday night through Monday morning, I can promise you that on Monday morning, a woman named Priscilla Okafor is going to try to reach her at her own apartment and will not find her there, and your sister will have 12 extra hours to make a phone call to a good lawyer before she has to have the worst conversation of her life. That is the most I can do. That is the most anyone will do for her. Tell her to go to New York. Tell her to go today. Delia was quiet for a moment. 12 hours. 12 hours is the difference between a lawyer she finds in a panic and a lawyer, a friend of a friend, gets her in bed by 11 at night. Okay. Delia. Yes. This is the last thing I'm going to ask of you. After this, you do not know me. You never knew me. If the day comes when you read about what happened in this city, you will not know my name. Do you understand? I understand. Go. Delia hung up. Evelyn stood in the greeting card aisle holding a phone that had one contact programmed in it, and she breathed in, and she breathed out, and she put the phone back in her coat pocket. She bought the lemons. She bought olive oil. She bought a wedge of Parmesan and a head of garlic and a bottle of wine Victor liked. She drove home. She made dinner. Victor came home at 6:30. They ate together. He told her about a man who had called him from the maritime group and had used the phrase concerning irregularities, and Victor had laughed it off at the dinner table but had poured himself 3 fingers of scotch after, which was not as usual. He went into the study. He closed the door. Evelyn heard his voice rise once, through the wall, and then fall, the way a man's voice falls when he has decided not to shout at the person on the other end of the line, because the person on the other end of the line is more important than he is. She did the dishes. Marguerite was gone for the night. Evelyn stood at the sink and she looked out the window over it into the dark lawn, and she thought about Scarlett Vane getting on a train in a few days, not knowing that her sister's voice on the other end of a phone call had bought her a lawyer she would meet at 11 o'clock on a Monday night. It was the one mercy Evelyn had handed out in 8 months of planning. She was not sure she felt good about it. She was not sure she was supposed to feel good about it. She dried her hands on the dish towel. She went upstairs. Victor was still in the study. She could hear his voice through the door, smaller now, tired. She walked past the door without stopping. She went into the bedroom. She sat down on the edge of the bed. 9 days. She took the wedding ring out of the drawer in the nightstand. She looked at it for a long time. The stone was still pretty. It had been her grandmother-in-law's, and Victor had given it to her in a little velvet box on the terrace of a restaurant in Florence, and she had cried at the time in a way that now felt like somebody else's memory, a scene from a movie she had watched and not been in. She put the ring back on her finger. She wanted Victor to see it on her finger in the next 9 days, every time he looked down at her hand on the breakfast table, on the arm of the couch, in the back of his car on the way to a dinner. She wanted him to look at that ring and feel safe, and she wanted him to feel safe because the safer he felt, the louder it would be when the feeling ended. She turned off the lamp. She lay down in the dark. Victor came to bed 40 minutes later, smelling of scotch, not saying anything, not reaching for her. He fell asleep in under 5 minutes. His breathing evened out. The house ticked the way old houses tick, and outside the window something small ran across the lawn and was gone. Evelyn did not sleep for a long time. She lay in the dark with her ring on her finger and her husband breathing next to her, and she thought about a ballroom 9 days from now, and she thought about Scarlett Vane crying into a phone, and she thought about Adrian Volkov in a chair in Diane's office, saying, "I am trying very hard, Evelyn, to be a person who does not lie to you," and somewhere between one thought and the next, very late, with the clock on the nightstand reading 4:17, she fell asleep, and she did not dream. The clock on the nightstand read 6:40 when Victor's alarm went off, and Evelyn opened her eyes on a ceiling she had looked at for 7 years and realized she was looking at it for one of the last times. 9 days became 8. 8 became 5. 5 became 2. The days ran on a track she could no longer step off of, and she didn't want to. She moved through them with the precise, hollow calm of a woman walking across a frozen pond who has decided the ice will hold because she has already decided where she is going. Victor in the last week became strange. Not suspicious of her. Suspicious was the wrong word. Victor had never, in 7 years of marriage, been capable of suspicion about Evelyn, because suspicion required him to believe she was the kind of person something might be happening inside. He had never given her that much credit. No, what he became was something worse for him and better for her. He became needy. He came home at 5:30 one night, 2 nights in a row, then at 6, then at 5 again. He sat on the kitchen island and watched her chop vegetables and asked her small questions about her day that he had not asked in 3 years. He told her one evening that he had been thinking about their honeymoon. Did she remember the olive grove? Did she remember the old man who had sold them the figs? She remembered. She told him she remembered. She smiled the smile she had been practicing for 8 months in mirrors and car windows, the smile that lived in the lower half of her face and did not reach her eyes, and Victor, who had never looked at her eyes with any real attention, did not notice. On the Wednesday before the gala, He came into the bedroom while she was laying out the dress she had told him she was going to wear, a pale blue one, floor length, that his mother had bought her for a charity event 2 springs ago and that she had never liked. He looked at it on the bed and he said carefully, "Is that what you're wearing Friday?" "Yes." "Sweetheart, maybe wear the gold one, the Valentino. You always look incredible in the Valentino." "You don't like this one." "I love this one. I just like the gold one more. Friday's a big night for me. I want you next to me looking like you feel as good as I feel." "Okay. Okay? Okay, Victor, I'll wear the gold one." He kissed the top of her head. He told her he loved her. He left the room. She stood looking at the blue dress on the bed, and she picked it up and folded it back into its garment bag, and she hung the gold one up on the back of the closet door where Victor would see it when he walked by in the morning. She did not, of course, intend to wear the gold one. She had picked a dress for Friday night 11 weeks ago, and that dress was hanging right now in a closet in an apartment at the Whitmore Hotel, wrapped in tissue paper, and nobody in this house would ever see it until it walked through the doors of a ballroom at 9:17 on Friday night. She was not angry at him in that moment for telling her what to wear. She was in a small, detached way, almost grateful. It was one more piece of evidence for the version of herself that might, in the middle of some dark night in some future year, second-guess this. It was a man telling a woman, 2 days before she ended him, "I want you to decorate my evening the way I have decided you should." She took it. She tucked it away. Thursday night, Victor worked late. He came home at 11. He was drunk. Not stumbling drunk, but the particular smooth drunk of a man who has had 3 scotches with a person who matters to him and is pretending to himself he has only had 2. He found her in the library with a book, and he stood in the doorway with his tie undone, and he looked at her for a long moment. And Evelyn, who had become an expert in the small weather of his face, saw something pass across it she had not seen before. Fear, not a lot, a thread of it. A man standing in a doorway looking at his wife and for 1 second asking himself a question he did not want to finish asking. She closed the book. "You're home." "Yeah." "How was dinner?" "Fine." "You don't look fine." He came into the room. He sat down heavily on the arm of the chair across from her. He rubbed his face with both hands. "Maritime's a mess," he said into his hands. "I'm sorry. They want to renegotiate. They're talking like somebody's been talking to them about things they shouldn't know." "Like what?" "Nothing. Nothing. It's nothing. Just noise." "Victor." "It's nothing, Evelyn. Let it go." "Okay." He dropped his hands. He looked at her. In the lamplight, he looked older than 43. There were deep half circles under his eyes she had not noticed that morning. He had not shaved that morning, actually, and there was the rough beginning of stubble at his jaw, and his mouth was set in a line she had seen 1,000 times across 1,000 dinner tables, the line of a man who has decided not to say the thing he is thinking. "Evelyn?" "Yes." "Are we okay?" She watched him for what felt like a long time. She watched the muscle jump once, at the corner of his jaw. She watched his fingers curl around the arm of the chair. "We're fine, Victor." "You'd tell me." "Yes." "If something was wrong, you'd tell me." "Yes." "Okay." "Okay." He held her eyes for another second. Then he nodded, once, more to himself than to her, and he stood up and walked out of the library. She heard him go up the stairs. She heard his footsteps cross the landing and stop, briefly, at the door of the bedroom, and then go past it, down the hall, to the study. The study door closed. The lock turned. Evelyn sat in the chair with the book in her lap for a long time. He had almost asked her. He had come within 2 words of asking her. She had watched the question come up into his throat, and she had watched him swallow it back down, because asking the question would have required him to believe the answer could be no, and Victor had never in his life believed a woman could have an answer of no to him. It was the closest he had ever come, in 7 years of marriage, to actually seeing her. She felt sitting there a small, sick wave of something that was not pity, but was the country next to pity. The country where you look at a person who has been cruel to you and you recognize for a half second that he is also afraid, and you put the recognition down, carefully, because you cannot carry it where you are going. She put it down. She went upstairs. She slept in the guest bedroom for the first time in the marriage. She told Marguerite in the morning that she had a headache and had not wanted to disturb Victor's sleep. Victor, when he came down for coffee, did not comment on it. He kissed her cheek. He told her he would see her tomorrow night at the gala. He left for the office. She watched him drive away down the gravel of the front circle, and she thought, "The next time you see me, your whole life is going to end inside of a minute." On Friday morning, Evelyn Hart packed a small bag, not much, a change of clothes, her passport, which she had renewed in February under her maiden name, and which Victor did not know existed. 2 photographs, one of her mother and one of a dog she had had as a child named Polly. A letter she had written to herself 8 months ago, on the night she had first read the texts, and had sealed in an envelope and not opened since. A toothbrush. Nothing else. She had already, over a period of weeks, moved the things that mattered to her out of the house in small quantities, the way a woman empties a house around a husband who does not look at the walls. A silver hairbrush that had been her grandmother's, a small painting of the sea, a ring her mother had given her for her 16th birthday. These lived now in a safety deposit box in Connecticut under Evelyn Marsh, and they would stay there until she wanted them. What she carried into the bag was the minimum. She told Victor, who had come home at lunch for a reason she did not press him on, that she was going to the city at 3 to get her hair and nails done for the gala. She told him she had booked a room at the Whitmore because the hotel where the gala was being held was fully booked, and she wanted to be near so she could rest in the afternoon and dress slowly. She told him she would meet him at the ballroom at 9. He, distracted, a phone buzzing in his hand, said, "Fine, sure, yeah, that sounds good. I'll see you there." And he kissed her forehead, and he went back into the study, and she took her bag and her keys, and she walked out of the house on Ashbury Lane, and she did not look back at it. She drove to the city. She did not cry in the car. She did not sing along to anything on the radio. She drove at 5 miles over the speed limit on a bright, clear Friday afternoon in April, and she watched the trees on the side of the highway, and she noticed that the leaves had started to come in. Finally, that spring had shown up while she was not paying attention, and she thought, "I have lived through an entire winter inside this plan." She reached the Whitmore at 2:40. The concierge knew her. There was no paperwork. A man in a gray suit carried her bag up to a suite on the 22nd floor that had been reserved under Diane's name, and when she opened the door to the suite, a woman in black was already there, laying out brushes on the vanity in the bathroom. "Ms. Marsh." "Inez." "Yes." They shook hands. Inez was about 50. Gray-streaked dark hair and a low bun, no makeup herself, a face that was not warm but was intelligent. She had done Evelyn's hair for the Christmas gala 2 years ago when Diane had hired her quietly and without explanation, and Evelyn had not thought of it until this moment. "Your hair first," Inez said, "then makeup. We have time. There is tea if you'd like." "I would." She drank the tea. She sat in front of the vanity and closed her eyes, and Inez's hands moved through her hair for an hour, and Evelyn did not speak. She could have been having a nightmare. She could have been having a dream. Her body was a body in a chair, and somewhere outside of it her mind was already in a ballroom, rehearsing the walk. When Inez turned her toward the mirror, at a little past 4, Evelyn did not recognize herself for a full 3 seconds. Her hair was up. Not the elaborate sculpted style she had worn to these things for 7 years, the one Victor liked, tall and stiff. This was simpler. Low at the back of her neck, a few strands loose around her face on purpose. The makeup was not the heavy contouring she was used to. Her eyes looked somehow bigger. Her mouth was a color she had not worn in 10 years. A deep, almost brown red, matte, unfriendly. She looked like herself. She looked like herself the way she had looked at 22, before she had learned to soften her face for dinners where the men were loud and the women were expected to be a little out of focus. She looked, she realized with a small shock, like Evelyn Marsh. Miss Marsh. Yes. The dress. The dress came out of a garment bag. Evelyn stood to put it on. It was black, long, floor length, not tight exactly, but close. A high neck, long sleeves, a back that was cut down almost to the base of her spine. It was the opposite of every dress she had worn to one of Victor's events. Victor liked her in jewel tones, in emerald and sapphire, and a particular shade of red that he said looked like Christmas on her. This dress said nothing about Christmas. This dress was not a garment she was wearing for a husband's eye. It was a garment that had been chosen to turn a room's attention toward a woman walking through a doorway. and when Evelyn stepped into it and Inez zipped it closed, she felt the small click of the zipper at the base of her neck, and she thought, there, that's it. That's the sound of it starting. Inez clasped a necklace at her throat. One thin chain, a single dark stone. No earrings, no bracelets. Evelyn's wedding ring came off at 5:10 and went into a small black box Inez held out to her without being asked, and Evelyn closed the lid of the box without looking at the ring, and she handed the box back to Inez, and Inez put the box into her own bag and said, Diane will return this to you on Monday if you want it returned. I don't. I thought you wouldn't. I'll say so. Evelyn's phone, the regular one, the one Victor had the number to, had been in her purse in the other room vibrating, intermittently, for about 40 minutes. She had not looked at it. At 5:20, she walked over and picked it up. 6 messages. Where are you? I'm at the hotel. Evelyn, I'm at the ballroom. They're doing sound check. Sweetheart, are you coming? Evelyn, call me. I'm starting to worry. Please pick up. She looked at the screen for a long time. She felt, for a second, very old. An old woman looking at words on a glass rectangle that a man she had once loved had typed with his thumbs. She set the phone face down on the dresser. She walked into the bathroom and washed her hands, because the tea had gone cold on her fingertips, and she came back and picked up the phone and wrote 3 words and hit send. I'm on my way. Then she turned the phone off and she put it in the drawer of the bedside table, and she did not take it with her when she left the room. At 8:40, she took the elevator down to the lobby. The lobby of the Whitmore was doing the thing hotel lobbies do on a Friday night in April. Soft lamp light and 2 piano notes a minute, and a woman in a green coat laughing at something a man had just said to her. Evelyn walked through it like a person in a museum. She did not look left or right. She did not look for Adrian. She had been told not to look for him. She walked to the revolving door and she stepped into one of the compartments of it. And when she came out onto the sidewalk on the other side, Adrian was standing there. He was in a black tuxedo. No tie. A white shirt open at the collar, the way she had seen him the first time, except the white was a different kind of white. A white that had come out of a box that afternoon. His hair was a little damp, the way a man's hair is damp an hour after a shower. He had a long coat over his arm and he was not wearing it. He looked at her when she came through the door, and he did not say anything for a second, and then he said, Evelyn. Adrian. You look... Don't. He almost smiled. I wasn't going to say beautiful. Good. I was going to say ready. She held his eyes for a second. I'm ready. A car was at the curb. A long black one. Not a limousine, a sedan, the kind of car you do not notice on a street in this city because there are 400 of them on any given block. A man she did not know opened the rear door and Evelyn got in, and Adrian went around the other side and got in beside her, and the door closed, and the car pulled away from the curb, and the city slid past the tinted window in streaks of gold and red. He did not speak for the first 3 minutes. Neither did she. At a red light, he turned his head and he looked at her profile for a second, and when the light changed and the car started moving again, he said quietly, There is one thing I did not tell you. About tonight. About tonight. Tell me. Scarlet Vane is not going to be there. Evelyn turned her head. Where is she? She went to New York on Tuesday. She stayed at her mother's apartment. Last night she hired a lawyer. This morning at 9, her lawyer contacted a woman named Priscilla Okafor and offered a conversation. That conversation is happening now. She will not be at the gala. Your husband will have noticed by now that she is not coming. He will have texted her and received no response. He will be, at the moment we arrive, not certain but starting to be certain that something is wrong, and he will be at the microphone anyway, because Victor Hale is a man who does not cancel a room of 800 people for a feeling. Evelyn was quiet. Adrian. Yes. How did you know she would hire a lawyer last night? He did not answer for a second. Then he said, I didn't. I guessed. I guessed based on information I was given about a phone call she made to her sister last week. Evelyn looked at him. You know about Delia. Evelyn. Diane tells me what I need to know. I needed to know about Delia. You knew what I told her. I knew, after the fact, that you had done something I would not have sanctioned if you had asked me, and that it had by accident made our timing better, so I did not mention it. Why not? He looked out the window. Because, he said, You did it because you did not want a woman to die for a thing that was mostly Victor's fault, and I was not going to be the man who took that away from you. I allowed it. I didn't move against it. I told Priscilla to delay her visit to Scarlett's apartment by 1 day, which is why the 12 hours Delia bought her turned into 24. It was not entirely you who saved her. It was half you, half me. Why? Why did I delay Priscilla? Yes. He was quiet for a long second. Because you are a person who gave a woman 12 hours, he said, and I wanted to be the kind of person who could be in a room with you. The car turned on to Madison. The hotel was 3 blocks up. Evelyn looked at him. Adrian? Yes? I'm not a good person. Neither am I. I am doing this because I want him to feel it. I am not doing this because I am a hero. I know. You should know that. I know. Good. She looked back out the window. The car slowed. They were coming up on the hotel. She could see up ahead the long line of black cars and the line of people under the portico in furs and tuxedos, and the photographers on the sidewalk behind the ropes, and the flash of the bulbs like small, silent lightning. It was 8:58. Adrian. Yes. When we get there. Yes. You do not take my hand. You do not touch my back. You do not look at me. You walk beside me, half a step behind on my left. Everyone in that room has been trained, for 7 years, to look at a woman on the arm of a man. I do not want them to see me on the arm of anyone. I want them to see me walk in. You are the reason the room goes quiet. I am the reason it stays quiet. He did not answer for a moment. Then he said, Understood. The car stopped. A valet opened her door. Evelyn stepped out onto the sidewalk, and the cold April air came up under the hem of the black dress, and she heard through the open door of the hotel the faint layered sound of a ballroom at the beginning of a speech, a voice on a microphone, and the low undercurrent of 800 people being quiet at the same time. Adrian came around the car. He did not touch her. He walked half a step behind her on her left, as she had asked, and they moved together up the red carpet under the portico, and the photographers, not knowing who she was, took her picture anyway, because a woman in that dress walking into that hotel next to a man nobody had ever seen on a red carpet before was a photograph you took and sorted out later. They crossed the lobby. A man in a black suit with an earpiece, who had been waiting, fell in beside them without a word. He led them toward the ballroom. At the doors he paused. He looked at Adrian. Adrian nodded. Evelyn could hear her husband's voice now through the doors. He was on the microphone. He was giving the speech. It was the speech he gave every year. She had heard it 6 times. She knew when the applause lines were coming. She could have mouthed along. And in a year, that, on paper, looked like it was going to break us. We didn't just survive. We built. We built together. That is because Hale Capital is not a company. It's a family, and a family is what walks through fire for each other. Evelyn breathed in. She looked at the doors. She looked at Adrian. His face was unreadable. His eyes were on hers, and he did not say anything, because she had told him not to. She looked back at the doors. The man with the earpiece put his hand on the door handle. He waited. Inside, Victor was approaching the part of the speech that always got a laugh, the part about his grandfather and the taxi, and Evelyn waited, because she knew the beat, and when the laugh came rolling up through the doors like a wave, she nodded once, and the man with the earpiece pulled the doors open. The doors swung. The ballroom opened in front of her like a held breath. 800 people in their finest clothes, under 3 chandeliers, at round tables dressed in white linen. The low stage at the front. The microphone. Victor in a black tuxedo, in the middle of a laugh he had started himself, his head thrown back, his hand on the podium, happy in the particular self-satisfied way of a man who had made a room of important people laugh at his joke about his grandfather. She took 1 step into the room, and then another. The first person who saw her was a woman at a table near the back, a columnist for a magazine that covered these events. The woman's mouth opened just a little, and stayed that way, and she nudged the man next to her with her elbow without taking her eyes off Evelyn. The man looked. He stopped chewing. The ripple started there. It moved across the room the way a wind moves across a wheat field. Heads turned. Conversation stopped in the middle of words. A man at a table near the stage put his glass down and forgot to let go of it. 2 women at table 14, wives of men Evelyn had sat next to at other events, locked eyes with each other, and said, in perfect simultaneous silence, "Oh." And then somebody, near the middle of the room, saw the man walking half a step behind Evelyn on her left. And that person, whoever they were, stood up. Not dramatically, just on their feet, the way you stand up when the house you are in starts shaking and you are not sure yet what you are standing up for. Victor, at the podium, was still mid-laugh. He noticed the room before he noticed her. He noticed first that the laugh he had started was not being joined. He noticed second that the heads of the people he was looking at were not looking at him anymore. He noticed third that a woman at a table in the middle distance had put a hand over her mouth. He turned, still smiling, to follow the direction of her eyes. He saw Evelyn. She was maybe 40 feet from the stage now, walking steadily, the black dress moving around her hair low at the back of her neck, her hands empty at her sides. She was not smiling, she was not scowling. Her face was the face of a woman going to collect a package at the front desk of her own hotel, unhurried, unimpressed. Victor's smile dropped. Not all the way. It became a kind of frozen half-smile, the smile of a man whose face has received new information and has not yet figured out how to rearrange itself. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. Then he saw Adrian. The moment of recognition took almost a full second longer than the moment of seeing her, because Adrian was not a face Victor had in his internal catalog of dinner party threats. Adrian was not a name in his world. Adrian was a rumor from the wrong side of the city, a shape at the edge of the real estate pages, a surname attached, once or twice in the last decade, to a news story Victor had skimmed and forgotten. But Victor Hale had not grown a financial empire by being unable to recognize faces. He had shaken hands, at some point, in some room, with a man who did business with a man who did business with Adrian Volkov, and at that handshake, somewhere in a back booth of some restaurant 3 years ago, he had been quietly told, "That's the guy you do not make an enemy of. Do not do business with him. Do not do business against him. If he ever appears in your life, leave the room." The name came back to him now. She could see it happen. She could see the name Adrian Volkov crossing Victor's face the way a second piece of bad news crosses a man's face when the first piece has not even finished landing, and his knuckles on the podium went white. She stopped at the foot of the stage. She did not speak. She looked up at him, and she waited. The ballroom was silent. 800 people silent. It was the kind of silence you could hear the ice melting in. Somewhere to Evelyn's right, a woman set her glass down on a table, slowly, and the tiny click of the crystal on wood seemed, for a second, to be the loudest sound in the world. Victor had to speak first. Adrian had told her that. He will speak. He will say something he should not say because men in that position always do. And Victor, at the podium, with a microphone in front of him, was going to say something because Victor had never, in his life, been in a room and not had the last word. He said it. Evelyn. It came out almost as a whisper, and the microphone caught it, and it went across 800 people like a bell. Then louder, with the strange, false brightness of a man who has realized he is on a stage. "Sweetheart, you're late. We were worried." Nobody laughed. Nobody even shifted. Evelyn looked up at him, her hands folded now in front of her, and she spoke for the first time. She did not speak loud. She spoke the way Adrian had told her to, quietly, because she had learned, over 7 years of being overlooked, that the quietest voice in a silent room is the one every person leans in to hear. "Victor." "Yes, honey." "I need you to do something for me." "Anything, sweetheart." She let the sweetheart sit for a second in the air. She let the room hear it. She let the 800 people taste the false note of it, the particular wrongness of a man calling his wife sweetheart in front of a ballroom at the exact wrong moment. Then she said, still quietly, still clearly, into a room where a pin would have been a symbol, "I need you to step away from the microphone." Victor laughed. It was a terrible laugh. It was the laugh of a man who has not yet decided whether something is a joke. "Evelyn." "Step away, Victor." "Honey, this is—" "Step away from the microphone." He did not step away. But his hands came off the podium, and the podium, without his hands on it, looked, for 1 second, like a piece of furniture he had been leaning on for longer than it had been holding him up. Evelyn took one more step forward. She was at the very front of the room now. Every face in the ballroom was on her. She could feel Adrian somewhere behind her left shoulder, a presence, a weight she did not turn toward. because the room needed not to be about him yet. She looked up at her husband. Everyone in this room, she said, still quiet, is about to learn something. I'm going to tell them. I would rather they heard it from me than from the newspaper tomorrow morning. You're welcome to correct me if I get anything wrong. Victor's mouth opened. Nothing came out. And Evelyn Hart, who had been, for 7 years, furniture, drew in a breath and began, in the quietest voice in the ballroom, to speak. My name, she said, is Evelyn Marsh. I was Evelyn Hart for 7 years. As of this afternoon at 4:15, I am not. The ballroom did not make a sound. Victor's face did not change, but his left hand, which had come off the podium, went very slowly into his pocket. It was a gesture she had seen him make 1,000 times at dinner tables. It was the gesture he made when a deal was sliding away from him, and he was trying not to let the other side see that he knew it. The divorce, she said, was filed in December. It was finalized this week. My attorney is Diane Kessler. Some of you know her. Most of you have been told not to. A small ripple at a table to her right. A man in a silver tuxedo had leaned over to whisper something to the woman next to him, and the woman had put her hand flat on the table, hard, without looking at him, which was the most elegant way a wife had ever told her husband to shut up. I did not want the divorce to be a public thing. I wanted it to be a quiet thing, for reasons that were mine. Evelyn paused. She looked up at Victor. You will notice I am not asking for your permission to explain this, Victor. That is new for me. You may find it jarring. His jaw moved. Evelyn, we do not have to do this here. We are doing it here. Sweetheart, do not call me sweetheart again tonight, Victor. Not in this room, not in any room. That word is finished between us. She did not raise her voice when she said it. She did not need to. She simply said it the way a person turns off a lamp, and the word between them went dark. Victor stood there. He did not speak. Second, Evelyn said, earlier today, a woman named Priscilla Okafor at the Financial Regulatory Commission received documents concerning Hale Capital Partners. The documents detail approximately $41 million in irregularities involving a shipping operation in the Gulf and a series of shell companies. Ms. Okafor has been in conversation since this morning with a former employee of yours who has chosen to cooperate. I believe you know which employee. Victor's face, for the first time, did something that was not controlled. It slackened, just for a second. A muscle let go under his eye, and his mouth opened, and then he closed it, and his hand came out of his pocket and went back to the podium because he needed something to hold on to. You are going to be questioned, Evelyn said. Possibly tomorrow. I do not know the exact hour. I do know the questions. The questions are very specific. The people in this room who do business with you should understand that any contract currently in active negotiation with Hale Capital Partners is, as of tomorrow morning, a contract with a man who is going to spend the next 3 years trying to explain where $41 million went. Some of the people in this room will not wait until tomorrow morning. Some of you have already started, in the last 4 minutes, composing the phone calls you will make tonight. I am not judging you. I would do the same. A chair scraped, very faintly, somewhere in the back. Somebody had stood up. Nobody turned to look. Evelyn lifted her chin just slightly. Third, she said. Evelyn, stop. Third, the house on Ashbury Lane was purchased in 2019 through a trust that, for tax purposes, listed both of our names. Under the terms of the divorce, that trust has been dissolved. The house is mine. I will be selling it. I do not want it. If anyone here is in the market for a 22-room house with very good light in the east drawing room, my attorney will be accepting inquiries on Monday. A small, startled laugh escaped someone near the middle of the room. A man. It was cut off almost as quickly as it came, but it had happened, and its happening cracked the room's silence in a particular way that mattered. The ballroom was not a monolith anymore. It was 800 individual people who had, a minute ago, been Victor's guests, and were now something else. Fourth, she paused, the apartment in the city, the cars, the art, Victor's interest in Hale Capital Partners. Those are his. I want to be clear about that because the reporters in this room will misreport it if I am not. I am not taking his business. His business is taking itself from him, and it is doing so because of choices he made that I did not make for him. She stopped. She looked up at him. He He was staring down at her now, with an expression she had never in 7 years seen on his face. It was not rage, it was not grief. It was the face of a man who has just realized in 1 second that the floor he has been standing on for his whole life has never been a floor. It has been a rug, and somebody has just picked up a corner of it. Victor. He did not answer. Did not. I want to say one more thing, to you, personally. The rest of the room is welcome to listen, but this one is for you. Silence. For 7 years you lived in a house with me, and you did not know me. You did not know what kind of coffee I liked. You did not know my maiden name was Marsh. You did not know I had stopped wearing perfume in January. You did not know I had opened the safe in your library 47 times since August. You did not know any of it because you had decided early that I was a particular kind of object you had acquired, and you stopped looking at me. That was your mistake. It was not the worst thing you did to me, but it was the foundation of the worst things. It is the reason you are standing where you are standing. Because a man who looks at his wife sees eventually what she is becoming. A man who does not look at her finds out one night in front of 800 people that she became somebody else a long time ago. Her voice did not shake. I am not angry at you, Victor. I used to be. I was for about 45 minutes one Tuesday in October. After that, I was something else, and I have been something else ever since, and I have used those months to do the work. I am not angry at you tonight. I do not feel anything for you tonight. That is the part I want you to carry out of this room. Not my rage. The nothing. You are nothing to me now. You have not been something to me for a long time. I just thought you should hear it out loud, in a voice you can't interrupt. She looked at him for one more long beat. Then she said very quietly, "Goodbye, Victor." She turned. She walked back down the center of the ballroom, the same direction she had come in, past the tables of men and women in their finest clothes, past the columnist whose mouth was still open, past the waiters who had stopped moving, past the white linen and the chandeliers and the perfume and the smell of 100 different dinners. And Adrian Volkov walked half a step behind her on her left. And he did not touch her, and he did not speak, and every person at that ballroom would later swear that he had not said a single word the entire time he was in the room, and they would be right. At the doors, Evelyn paused. She did not turn around. She spoke to the room without looking at it. The catering has been paid for through 11. Please stay. It's a lovely room. She walked out. The doors closed behind her and Adrian, and for 3 full seconds the ballroom held the kind of silence that only happens in rooms where nobody knows what the correct next thing to do is. Then, at a table in the back, a woman stood up and picked up her purse and walked out. Then a man at a table near the front. Then 3 people at once at a table in the middle. Within 4 minutes, the ballroom was emptying in the particular embarrassed way of a party that has been ended by an event nobody will know how to describe at breakfast the next morning. Victor Hale stood at the podium and watched it empty. He did not move from the podium for a long time. Later, a waiter would say that he had stood there for nearly 15 minutes, one hand on the wood, watching the tables clear, watching his own staff not look at him, watching the lights start to come up on a ballroom that had, an hour ago, been his. When he finally walked off the stage, he walked past the bar. He walked past the coat check. He walked out the side door onto Madison Avenue at about 10 o'clock on a Friday night in April, and he stood on the sidewalk in a tuxedo with no coat, and his phone was in his pocket, and he did not take it out, because there was no one left to call. Evelyn did not go back to the Whitmore. The car took her and Adrian downtown. It stopped outside a brownstone on a side street she did not know the name of. Adrian got out first. He opened her door. He did not offer his hand because she had asked him earlier not to. He walked her up 3 wide stone steps to a black door, and he unlocked the door with a key on a plain steel ring, and he stepped aside to let her go in first. The foyer was warm. There was a lamp on a narrow table and a single vase and a coat hook with nothing on it. The house smelled faintly of cedar and more faintly of lemon. It did not smell like a man who lived alone. It did not smell like a woman who lived with him. It smelled like a house that had been aired out that afternoon. She stood in the foyer in the black dress, and she did not know where to put her hands. "This is mine," he said. "I have 3 others. I picked this one because it is the quietest. I thought you might want quiet tonight." "Yes, there is a room at the top of the stairs. The door is the second on the left. Nobody is in this house except us. There is food in the kitchen if you want it. There is tea. There is a bottle of something older than either of us if you want that instead. Or nothing. You do not have to eat anything. You do not have to speak to me. I am going to be in the room at the back, on this floor, for as long as you are awake. If you need anything, come find me. If you do not need anything, you will not see me until morning. Mistress. Evelyn did not answer for a moment. Then she said, Adrian. Yes. Why this? Why not a hotel? He looked at her. Because, he said, when a woman does what you just did, she should not fall asleep in a hotel room with a mint on her pillow. That is not the night for a mint. I have found over the years that after a certain kind of evening, a person needs to be in a house and not in a room somebody cleaned that afternoon. This is a house. It has been here 110 years. It has outlasted worse nights than this one. I thought you might find that restful. Evelyn looked at him. Adrian. Yes. I'm not going to sleep with you tonight. Something happened in his face that was almost offended. Not quite. He controlled it before it got there. Evelyn, I did not ask you to. I know. I brought you to a house with a guest room because I thought you might want a guest room. I did not bring you to a house with a bed I expect you to be in. If you had asked me to take you to the Whitmore, I would have taken you to the Whitmore. If you would like to go to the Whitmore now, I will take you. The car is still outside. She looked at him for a long time. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm sorry anyway. Evelyn. Yes. It is 1:20 in the morning. Go upstairs. There is a robe on the back of the door. There is toothpaste in the drawer. There's a kettle in the room because I asked someone to put one there this afternoon because I thought, at some point tonight, you might want a cup of tea by yourself. That is as far as I have planned. I have not planned the rest. Go upstairs. She almost laughed. The almost laugh came up her throat and stuck there. She went upstairs. The guest room was simple. A bed, a lamp, a window that looked out onto a small dark garden, a kettle, a small basket with tea, a robe on the back of the door, as he had said. She stood in the middle of the room in the black dress for a minute, and she took it off slowly, and she hung it on a hanger in the closet, and she put on the robe. She sat on the edge of the bed. She did not cry. She thought she was going to. The body, she had learned, did not always do what the mind had planned. She had planned, walking out of the ballroom, to cry in the car. She had not cried in the car. She had planned in the foyer to cry on the stairs. She had not cried on the stairs. She sat on the edge of the bed in a robe that smelled like cedar, and she waited for the crying, and it did not come. What came was hunger. It surprised her. She had not eaten since lunch. She had not been hungry then either, but she was hungry now, in the way a person is hungry after the end of a long run. A clean physical hunger, detached from everything else in her. She went downstairs. Adrian was in the kitchen, not at the stove, at the counter. He was peeling a piece of bread away from a loaf with his hands, which was a thing she had not expected to ever see him do, and there was a plate beside him with cheese and a few olives and 2 tomatoes sliced on it. He looked up when she came in. He did not look surprised. I thought you might come down. I'm hungry. I know. How did you know? I have been through nights like this. Not the same. Close enough. I have learned what a body wants at 1:30 in the morning on a night it has been carrying something for 8 months. He pushed the plate toward her. She stood at the counter and ate a piece of bread with a piece of cheese on it. She ate a tomato. She ate an olive. He poured her a glass of water from a pitcher in the fridge, and she drank it, and then he poured her another, and she drank that one too. They did not speak. The kitchen was quiet. There was a clock on the wall, the ordinary kitchen kind, and it ticked, and the tick was pleasant. The refrigerator hummed. A car went past the house on the street outside, slow, and its headlights crossed the wall for a second and went away. Adrian. Yes. I want to ask you something. Yes. And I want you to answer it honestly. All right. Why did you delay Priscilla for that extra day? Really, not the answer you gave in the car. He leaned against the counter. He folded his arms. He looked at the floor for a second, the way a man looks at a floor when he is composing a sentence he has not said out loud before. Because, he said, I grew up in a town where a woman named Vera Alexandrovna lived 3 houses from my mother. Vera had a husband who beat her. Everyone in the town knew. Everyone in the town did nothing. One winter, the husband beat her badly enough that the doctor who came to the house said she would not walk again. She walked again. It took 3 years. She walked with a cane the rest of her life. My mother used to bring her bread. That was all. Bread, twice a week. I asked my mother once, when I was 9, why she did not do more. My mother said, "Adrian, I am not a strong woman. Bread is what I can do. Bread twice a week is not nothing. Bread twice a week is a thing Vera knows she can count on. That is not nothing." He paused. Vera died when I was 19. Her husband outlived her by 4 years. I was already in this country by the time he died. I did not go back for the funeral, but I thought that week about bread twice a week. My mother was a woman who could not save anybody. She could bring bread. The bread mattered. He looked up. "Scarlet Vane is not Vera Alexandrovna," he said. "Scarlet Vane is a woman who made bad choices with a married man and helped him move money. I am not sentimental about her. I am not pretending she is a saint. But when you told Delia Vane to tell her sister to go to New York, you gave that woman bread. 12 hours of bread. It cost you nothing, and it saved her life, possibly. And at the least it saved her from hiring a bad lawyer at 5 in the morning. I delayed Priscilla because you had given her bread, and I wanted, for once, to be a man who let a piece of bread do its work." He stopped. Evelyn did not speak for a second. "Adrian." "Yes." "You are a strange man." "I know." "You move money that is not yours. You know people who have disappeared. You have 3 houses. You just told me a story about your mother and bread." "Yes." "All of those things are true at the same time." "They are." "I do not understand you." "You do not have to." "I would like to." He looked at her. "Then we have time," he said. "I am not going anywhere tomorrow, or the day after. The business is handled. You are free. I am, for the first time in 9 years, not in the middle of a fight I have to finish. If you want to understand me, you can take as long as you want." She almost said something. She did not. She put the last olive in her mouth. She chewed it. "Adrian." "Yes." "Thank you for the bread." He almost smiled. "You're welcome, Miss Marsh." 7 months later, Hale Capital Partners existed only on paper. The investigation that Priscilla Okafor had begun on the morning of April 12th had widened, in the way investigations do, into a second investigation by a different agency, and then a third. Victor had been indicted in June on 17 counts. He had taken a plea in August on the advice of a lawyer who had told him, in plain language, that a trial would cost him a decade and a plea would cost him 4 years and the rest of his name. He took the 4. Scarlet Vane had cooperated. She had testified. She had, in the end, avoided prison, as Diane had guessed she would, and she had moved out of the city and back to the town she had grown up in, and she had taken a job as a bookkeeper for a small construction company where nobody knew who she had been, and her sister Delia had, at some point that summer, answered a phone call and talked to her for 19 minutes. Delia wrote a letter to Evelyn about it in October. The letter said, "She doesn't know it was you. She doesn't know it was me. She thinks we saved her because she is our family. Let her think it. It makes her kinder." Evelyn did not write back. She had told Delia, in the Blue Kettle, that after that night she would not know her. She was not a woman who went back on her word. She kept the letter. She kept it in a drawer, in a desk, in a study, in a brownstone on a side street in the city, which was where, in the end, she came to live. She did not move in right away. She kept the guest room for 7 weeks. Then, in early June, she asked Adrian if there was a room on the second floor that was not a guest room but was also not his. And he said yes, there was a study nobody used, and she said that afternoon that she would like it to be hers. And he said, without looking up from the paper he was reading, "The desk by the window has a good chair. Inez's son picked it out. It is better than it looks," and that was all. She married him, in the end. It was a small thing. A city clerk on a Thursday afternoon. Diane was the witness. Marguerite came up from where she had retired in the country. Marguerite cried. She was the only person in the room who cried. Evelyn had the next to her, on the folding chair next to Adrian's. When it was done, they took Marguerite to lunch at a restaurant near Gramercy that she had wanted to eat in once, 30 years ago, and had never been to, and Evelyn paid. It was not a big wedding. There was no dress in a magazine. There were no 800 people in a ballroom. Evelyn had done the ballroom once, in a white dress, at 24. The ballroom was not a thing she needed to do twice. She thought about Victor sometimes, in the years after, not often. Less and less as time went on. He sent her a letter once from the federal facility in the second year of his sentence. Diane intercepted it, the way Diane intercepted all of his attempts, and Diane called her from the office and said, "He has sent you a letter. Do you want me to read it?" Evelyn thought about it for a second and said, "No, burn it." Diane said, "All right," and then, after a pause, "Evelyn, for the record, I would not have burned it if you had asked me to read it. I would have read it." Evelyn said, "I know. That is why I am asking you to burn it. Please." Diane burned it. That was the last time Evelyn thought about Victor for a long stretch of months. When she did think about him, it was not with hate. It was with the strange, cool pity of a person who has walked a long way away from a place and, turning back on a hilltop, can see the place plainly for the first time. He had been, she thought, a small man who had grown up being told he was large, and the gap between what he had been told and what he was had been the engine of everything else. He had needed, in the end, for everyone around him to agree that he was the man he had been told he was. When one of them stopped agreeing, the whole story had cracked, and the crack had run through every other relationship he had, because the other relationships had been built on the story too. She did not feel sorry for him. She felt at most a thin, remote curiosity about what his life was now. Whether he read, whether he had made a friend, whether, sitting in whatever room he was sitting in on a Wednesday night, he ever thought about the coffee she liked and realized he had never known. She suspected he did not. She suspected he had told the story of his ruin by now 100 times, and that in every telling of it he was still the main character, and she was still furniture. She had come to peace, a long time ago, with being furniture in the story he told himself. It was no longer her job to be anything in his story. Her job was to be something in her own. But what Evelyn would have said, if anyone had asked her later, was this. She would have said that revenge is not what people think it is. It is not a fire. It is not a scream. It is not a woman in a red dress with a knife in her hand. Those are the pictures people use because the pictures are easier than the truth. The truth is that revenge, done properly, is long and quiet and patient, and by the time you get to the end of it, you are not the person who started. The woman who walks out of the ballroom is not the woman who walked into the study with the phone. The woman who walks out has spent 8 months becoming somebody. And at the end of the walk, the husband is not the point. The point is the walk. She would have said that the worst thing Victor ever did to her was not the affair. Anyone could have an affair. Affairs were cheap. The worst thing Victor ever did to her was the 7 years before the affair, when he had been home every night and had eaten dinner with her and had slept next to her and had still somehow managed to arrange his life so that she had never, in any of those nights, been seen. The affair had been a symptom. The unseen part had been the thing. A woman could survive an affair. A woman could not survive, not really, being in a room with a man for 7 years and being invisible in it. That kind of invisibility was a slow poison, and by the time you noticed you were being poisoned, you were already halfway dead, and the hard part was not killing him. The hard part was walking yourself back up out of the well. She would have said, if anyone had asked her, that the thing she was proudest of from that year was not the ballroom. The ballroom was the easiest part. The ballroom was a 40-minute event she had rehearsed for 8 months. The thing she was proudest of was a Tuesday afternoon in the greenhouse at the back of the brownstone the following spring, when Marguerite had come up for a weekend visit, and Marguerite had asked her how she took her coffee, and Evelyn had said, with milk. A little sugar, and Marguerite had said, I know, I remember, and Evelyn had started to cry. In the greenhouse. Not hard, a small quiet crying, and Marguerite had let her, and had put a hand on her shoulder, and had said nothing, because Marguerite was the kind of woman who had learned a long time ago that there were cries you did not fill with words. That was the moment, Evelyn would have said, when she knew that the plan had worked. Not the ballroom, the greenhouse. A woman crying about the way her coffee got remembered. You could not plan for a moment like that. You could only arrive at one years later on the other side of a life you had taken apart and rebuilt, and know that the rebuild had held. She lived in the end a long and mostly quiet life. She did not become famous. The ballroom story made the papers for about 3 weeks and was replaced, as stories are, by other stories. There were people in the city who remembered it, and who, at dinner parties for the next 10 years, would lean across and whisper, "She was the one in the black dress." "That's her," when Evelyn walked into a restaurant. Evelyn ignored them. She had done her walking into rooms. She did not need to do it again. She ran, for 12 years, a small foundation that paid the legal fees of women who needed to leave husbands and did not have the money to leave them. Diane sat on the board. The foundation never advertised. It operated on a tip network, woman to woman, through hairdressers and pediatricians and the quiet nurses in emergency rooms. It paid, over 12 years, the fees of 411 women. 2 of them went on to write books. 1 became a state senator. Most of them went on to live quieter lives in smaller houses with better coffee. And Evelyn was never in any of their photographs because she had told Diane, at the start, "My name does not go on anything. Not the letterhead, not the website, not the thank you note. Put Diane's name on it. Put anybody's. Not mine." I already had my night in the ballroom. That was enough. Adrian grew older next to her. He became, in some slow way she could not have named the date of, less of the man in the tuxedo at the door of a ballroom and more of a man with good hands who could make a good loaf of bread because he had decided in his 6th decade to learn and had turned out to be better at it than he had expected to be. He retired at 62 from most of what he had been. The 3 houses shrank to 1. The men at the window shrank to nobody. He died, in the end, at 77, in the same brownstone on the side street on a winter afternoon with his head in her lap and a book open next to him on the couch, and she stayed with him until the light went out of the room and a little after. She did not remarry. She had, in the 2 great chapters of her life, been one man's furniture and one man's partner, and she had decided sometime in her 60s that she did not need a 3rd chapter, and anyway nobody else was going to know how she took her coffee. She lived 11 years after him. She spent most of them in the brownstone. She read. She walked, in the park, in the mornings, until her knees told her it was time to stop, and then she walked shorter. She ate lunch, on Wednesdays, with Diane, who had also not remarried, and who, in her 80s, had become the sharpest woman Evelyn had ever known, which was saying something. She spoke, once a year, at a small dinner for the foundation, where she was introduced under a false name, because the false name was a joke Diane liked, and Evelyn had let her have. She died on a Tuesday in October, in her own bed, which she considered, in her last clear hour, a small private piece of poetry, because it had been on a Tuesday in October, a very long time ago, that a phone had buzzed 3 times on a marble console, and she had walked across a rug in stocking feet to pick it up. That was the last thing she thought about, Evelyn Marsh, before she went. Not the ballroom, not the speech, not the 800 faces. The rug, the stocking feet, the weight of a phone in her palm. The single small moment when a woman who had been furniture had lifted a piece of glass up to her face and had decided, without deciding, that she was going to become something else. And she had. And she had.